Chapter 1352, Fight for Treasure. The surrounding volcanoes rapidly erupted, spewing out a lot of white flames, which gave off a terrifying heat. The humans, magical beasts, 100 races, and sea race all hurriedly flew toward the treasure. All of them wanted to take it for themselves and, thus, drastically increase their own strength. Along the way, they constantly dodged the lava that rained down. Although the lava was extremely densely packed, almost forming a blanket, all of them were Saint Kings. Their understanding of the mysteries of space were incomparable to Saint Rulers, so they could easily avoid the lava. Clearly, they knew that the terrifyingly hot, white lava was very powerful. Even Saint Kings at 9th heavenly layer would not want to get any of it on themselves. Even when they were faced with the situation where they could no longer dodge, they would disperse it with an attack. They did not want to come in contact with the lava. The treasure is mine. Don't fight with me over it. I only want the treasure. I am not afraid to take on Saint Emperors for it. I might even be able to become a Saint Emperor with this treasure, a 9th heavenly layer human Saint King thought to himself. His eyes were filled with greed and eagerness. He used wind-attributed Saint Force, and coupled with his high-level understanding of the mysteries of space, he moved ahead of everyone else. At this moment, a silver-white spear shot over from afar, traveling toward the back of the leading Saint King. The person who had attacked was an 8th heavenly layer human Saint King. He wanted to stop the person in front of him and take the lead. The 9th heavenly layer Saint King became furious. Saint Force surged out of his body and enveloped him. An azure sword immediately appeared in his hand as he turned and knocked away the spear. Boom! The collision of the two weapons erupted with a loud sound. Battles between Saint Kings were destructive. Just the pulse of energy from the clash tossed boiling lava into the sky when it struck the sea below. White-hot lava surged into the sky like fire dragons, giving off extremely terrifying heat. Some of the Saint Kings who were unable to dodge the lava attacked it. Powerful strands of energy shot through the sky, colliding with the lava and erupting with heavy sounds. All of them had used ruthless methods to clear the obstructions before them. The wave-like lava was immediately dispersed by the Saint Kings, causing it to erupt in all directions like meteorites. The drops were densely packed like rain, which made dodging them even more difficult. Very soon, several Saint Kings were struck by the lava. The power of the white-hot lava exceeded anything that anyone could have imagined. The protective barrier formed from Saint Force around the Saint Kings was filled with holes because of the rain-like lava, which then burned through their bodies with white flames. The drops of lava left behind finger-sized holes that rapidly expanded to the size of a fist. The Saint Kings paled and produced heavy grunts. They stopped their advance and rapidly retreated. A violent poison from the fire was deposited within them after the lava passed through their bodies. If they did not cleanse it, it would cause even greater damage. What powerful lava! Many people witnessed the suffering Saint Kings and immediately became shocked. The white-hot lava was more terrifying than any of them had imagined. However, this was nowhere near enough to stop them from attempting to obtain the treasure. As they came closer and closer to the two pillars of light, more and more people engaged in battles. They all wanted to charge over first and take the treasure for themselves, before anyone else. Whenever someone took the lead, that person would have to withstand the combined attacks of multiple Saint Kings. The number of injured people increased as well. A 6th heavenly layer class 8 magical beast had even fallen into the sea of lava below. When he emerged again, he was covered with roaring flames. Even with his body as a class 8 magical beast, he was burned until he only had half his life left. His body suffered extremely severe injuries, where most of it had dried up from the heat. Suddenly, a terrifying ripple of energy appeared in front of them. A Saint King at great perfection, who was only a meter tall, had pulled out a shield. The shield expanded as he moved, reaching a width of 30 meters. After placing it behind him, he shot off like a rocket, surpassing everyone in a single moment. he took a wide lead. Immediately, the Saint Kings behind all attacked the dwarven Saint King, but all their attacks were blocked by the huge shield. More than 20 Saint Kings struck out in unison, but not only did they fail to smash through the shield, they did not even manage to make it shake. "It's the forbidden artifact of the dwarves, the Heaven's Guard," cried out a knowledgeable Saint King. "What? This is the Heaven's Guard?" It's said that even Saint Emperors cannot smash through it. It was a work of pride created by a powerful ancestor of theirs, and it's been passed down since ancient times. I never would have thought that the dwarves would have brought this forbidden artifact. He has the Heaven's Guard, so it's impossible for us to stop him like this. Stop fighting and catch up, or the treasure's going to end up with the 100 races. This is our Tian Yuan continent. Since a treasure has appeared here, it belongs to us humans. You have no right to take it. Many Saint Kings yelled from behind. They were extremely furious. They all stopped fighting and tried to catch up as quickly as possible while dodging the lava. Very soon, everyone was only 100 kilometers from the two pillars. However, at this moment, the dwarven expert at the very front with the Heaven's Guard produced a weird cry, as if he had seen something terrifying. He came to a sudden halt before retreating extremely quickly. As he retreated, his clothes were reduced to shreds in the incoming wind before turning into dust. His bronze skin also became covered with densely packed gashes. Every single wound was extremely thin to the point that they were difficult to distinguish by eye. However, they were all bone deep. Blood gushed out, and in the blink of an eye, the dwarf was covered in blood. He bellowed out and placed the Heaven's Guard above him. The edges of the shield immediately fell, forming a shell around the dwarven expert. The shield isolated him from the outside world. Even though that was what had happened, the shield constantly rang out with sounds, as if it was being hit by a storm of rain. At the same time, all the Saint Kings rushed up from behind, but without any exceptions, all the people who entered a 100-kilometer radius was attacked by something unknown. Even with Saint Force around them, they were unable to protect themselves. They suffered the same injuries as the dwarf. This is sword chi. My God, what powerful sword chi! And it's invisible. Everyone retreat, oh no. An extremely powerful sword intent has enveloped this place. The energy and air in the surroundings has been turned into invisible sword chi by the sword intent, making it exist everywhere. This sword chi is just too powerful. We cannot stand against it. Everyone retreat. A few experts who used swords understood what was going on and cried out in shock. Disbelief filled their faces. Chapter 1353, Birth of the Immortal Swords. Just what is this treasure? It's actually so powerful and terrifying that even we cannot get within 100 kilometers of it with our strength as Saint Kings. I think the treasure is probably an overwhelmingly powerful sword. Seeing how it can produce such terrifying sword chi without a person controlling it, it is no weaker than the ancestral weapons of the 10 protector clans. It might even surpass them in power. The birth of this treasure in such a crucial moment probably has something to do with the world of Forsaken Saints. It might be crucial to repelling the other world. Fantastic. I am skilled with the sword and have been enchanted by the sword for thousands of years. I may not be able to claim that I have reached absolute mastery, but there are few that can rival me in the world at the very least. The treasure is suitable for me. If I happen to obtain it, I will definitely do all I can to protect the continent, the ancestral emperor of the Felicity Empire said sternly. He was also filled with a desire to possess the treasure. Even though he was covered in blood, he still possessed the bearing of a ruler, which he had accumulated over the years. All the people had retreated to over 100 kilometers away from the treasure and no one dared to get any closer than that. Even the dwarven expert with the Heaven's Guard did not travel any closer. Even though he would be fine under the protection of the shield, he wouldn't be able to take the treasure for himself when he was encased by the shield. Of course, that was not the reason why he did not want to venture any further. The true reason was that he had sensed a presence that made his heart beat heavily. The dwarf calmed down. He continued to carry the heaven's guard, which had shrunken back to a meter in diameter, 100 kilometers away, as he stared at the two pillars of light while brimming with interest. He then gazed around the endless volcanoes and lava in the surroundings. After a moment of silent thought, he seemed to understand something and his face immediately changed. He called out with his rough voice, "I'm not going to take part in this anymore. The treasure is not something we can take." The dwarf immediately signaled the other experts of the 100 races, communicating with them through a secret technique. Afterward, he left without any reluctance at all. The experts of the 100 races all revealed slightly different expressions. They stared deeply at the location of the light before all choosing to silently leave. All the people of the 100 races have retreated. Have they found out what it is? A human immediately voiced his doubts. What do they know? Everyone's witnessed the might of the treasure. It's probably even more powerful than the ancestral weapons of the 10 protector clans. Even Saint Kings cannot approach it. Probably only Saint Emperors have the power to compete for it. Does the 100 races have any Saint Emperors? They know they're weak, which is why they abandoned the fight. A magical beast immediately responded scornfully. He had no goodwill for the 100 races. The people of the 100 races did not retreat too far away. They stopped at the outskirts of the volcanoes to watch. Without long, several tremendous presences engulfed the entire place. The news there had already reached the ears of the Saint Emperors. The 3 Class 9 magical beasts and the Path Lord of Carnal Desires had all arrived. They were extremely powerful, having reached the apex of the world. With the entire world in perspective, there were only a few people as powerful as them. There was no one who could dominate them other than the barrier spirit that had already reached the origin realm. As soon as the 4 of them entered the volcanic region, they shot toward the pillars of light. They moved extremely fast, to the point where it seemed like they were teleporting. In the end, they safely arrived above the largest volcano. They stared at the 2 pillars of light that had erupted from the crater. Energy that was enough to shake the surroundings protected them, keeping the invisible sword Qi away. Even with that, their barriers slightly trembled. The Path Lord looked at the bottom of the crater before glancing over the 3 other Saint Emperors with him. A sliver of undetectable coldness flashed through his eyes before he plunged into the lava. The 3 magical beasts did not hesitate either when they saw him move. They all jumped in as well. They had all witnessed the power of the treasure. Even as Saint Emperors, they were tempted by it. From afar, the Grand Elder of Mercenary City helplessly sighed. He mumbled, "It's a pity that the Great Elder is in seclusion refining the Divine Hall while the artifact spirit remains hidden away. Otherwise, there would be a chance that the treasure would belong to Mercenary City." Regret filled the faces of the Saint Kings when they saw the 4 Saint Emperors plunge into the lava. All of them were interested by such a powerful treasure, but they did not possess the strength of Saint Emperors. They were unable to get closer than 100 kilometers away. "I hope the treasure doesn't end up in the hands of foreigners," a few Saint Kings prayed inside. Even if someone else obtained the treasure, they hoped that that person would be a part of the Tianyuan continent. At this moment, 2 beams of extremely bright lights erupted from the central volcano. At that moment, the scarlet-red volcano had become half violet and half azure because of the beams of light. Countless sword Qi crisscrossed in the light. The sword Qi were not invisible but had materialized. Every single one of them was only the length and width of a finger, but they were all extremely resplendent, giving off a bright, white light. At the same time, a terrifying energy erupted from within the volcano, causing the entire mountain to violently jolt. Many boulders shattered and even the entire mountain had shrunk to half its size. The 4 Saint Emperors all surged back into the sky as flames burned around them. They were like 4 fireballs as they hung in the sky. Very soon, the flames were put out, revealing the 4 of them. They were all in a rather horrible shape. They had not been injured, but they had been forced out of the lava. The Path Lord and 3 magical beasts were completely shocked. They all stared down sternly and quietly. A long while later, the Path Lord broke the silence. That seems like sword chi, yet it's a little different. He spoke with a very heavy voice. The treasure was far more powerful than he had imagined. Probably even the emperor armaments of the protector clans could not rival it. This sword chi doesn't seem to be condensed from saint force or world force. It's like sword chi, yet it's different at the same time. However, I have never seen such terrifyingly powerful sword chi, Lankiros said in a heavy voice. The odd sword chi can harm me, but it's still not enough to bring life-threatening danger. We might as well charge in forcefully, Kaiser coldly said as his eyes shone brightly. The Path Lord shook his head and said, treasures of the world have appeared throughout history. According to the ancient records, the world gives birth to them and they are naturally nurtured. Once they have completely formed, they will erupt by themselves, unlike right now. I think this treasure is still being nurtured and still has not formed completely. If we take it forcefully, we might destroy it. You're right. Let's wait for now. It might not be the time to collect the treasure right now. If we try to take it at the wrong time, the treasure might even end up destroyed by our hands, said Sangqiong. His white clothes fluttered in the wind. His face was ruddy and filled with spirit, giving off a righteous feeling. He carried the slight presence of divinity. Kaiser and Lankiros both agreed with their suggestions. They had read the ancient records on treasures of the world, so they possessed some understanding as well. They knew that the Path Lord was telling the truth. Afar, the Grand Elder of Mercenary City let out a breath in relief before personally returning to Mercenary City. He wanted to find the barrier spirit and request her to take the treasure of the world. He did not wish to give up on something so powerful. Unfortunately, the barrier spirit basically never appeared. If she did not appear herself, no one could find her. The Grand Elder was flustered after using all the various methods he could think of in attempt to get a hold of her. I understand now. The barrier spirit is tasked with protecting Mercenary City and guarding the seal to the world of Forsaken Saints. She never takes part in the battles on the Tian Yuan continent. Treasures like these have appeared several times in the history of the Tian Yuan continent and she's never appeared for them. It's probably exactly because of this that the barrier spirit does not care for the treasure this time. Sigh, I have become muddle-headed, the Grand Elder understood something. He no longer paid any attention to the treasure and devoted himself to guarding Mercenary City. He poured all his attention into keeping track of the other world's movements. In the blink of an eye, the Path Lord and the Saint Emperors had waited in the volcanic region for 2 months. In those 2 months, they did not take a single step away, waiting and guarding the place silently. They were afraid that the treasure would appear once they left and be taken by someone else. At this moment, the 4 Saint Emperors' eyes snapped open simultaneously. Boom! In the next moment, the largest volcano exploded. It was reduced to countless pieces of loose rock and lava, which shot out in all directions. 2 eye-catching swords flew out of the lava and into the sky. The 2 swords were 1.3 meters in length each. They erupted with violet and azure lights, 1 color for each sword. They also gave off a shocking sword chi that was extremely powerful. Wherever the swords passed, the space would shatter and be reduced to darkness. They seemed to become the only existences in the world. The world seemed to lose its color before the swords, where even the scorching sun lost its radiance. The entire world seemed to kneel before the swords. The wind and clouds in the surroundings churned and the red clouds that hung in the sky all year round actually began to vanish. Thick, dark clouds silently gathered instead, replacing the red clouds. Chapter 1354, Puny Saint Emperors. 1. The 2 swords radiated a dazzling light as they revolved around the surroundings. They flew freely through the air. The two swords seemed like a couple of lovers. They moved close to one another, side by side. They did not separate, but they always maintained a certain distance away from each other. The clouds that had gathered in the sky had already become thicker and thicker. They sank lower and lower, as well as an invisible pressure from the clouds filled the surroundings. The Saint Kings that still remained found breathing rather difficult, as if a huge boulder pressed against their chests. The atmosphere was extremely heavy. However, everyone's attention had been drawn away by the two swords. They all followed the movements of the sword and paid no attention to the dark clouds in the sky. Their eyes were filled with desire and greed. The treasures nurtured by these volcanoes really are powerful swords as expected, and there's two of them, the ancestral emperor of the Felicity Empire said emotionally. He had been absorbed by the sword for thousands of years already. His insight was tremendous, able to tell the power of the two swords with a single glance. The treasures are spiritual, so they cannot be obtained by power. It will depend on the person's fortune. These two swords possess enough power to move the heavens, so probably even saint emperors are unable to take them by force. They must receive their recognition. Even an ordinary person can have the chance of obtaining one. If I am recognized, I can immediately become a saint emperor. Even though my cultivation level will not be there, my battle prowess will be no lower than a saint emperor's, that's right. These treasures are spiritual and they possess extremely great might. Probably even saint emperors are unable to take them by force. We all have the same opportunity. Come, everyone. Whoever receives the recognition of the treasures will immediately become an expert no weaker than saint emperors. Immediately, the group of people fell into a commotion. All the saint kings began to move, shooting into the air toward the two swords. At the same time, a few saint kings from ancient clans closed their eyes and formed hand seals. They wanted to use the secret techniques that had been passed down in their clans to communicate with the treasures. Treasures of the world had appeared several times throughout the history of the Tianyuan continent, but this did not mean that they could be taken forcefully. Some treasures possessed a spirit themselves and chose their own masters. As a result, a few ancient clans, who had existed for a particularly long time, possessed unique secret techniques to deal with these treasures. A game of tag unfolded high in the sky. A group of human and magical beasts tailed the swords desperately, along with a few experts of the sea race. However, no matter how hard they tried or what secret technique they used to increase their speed, they were unable to catch up with the swords. Although the two swords flew freely, they possessed unbelievable speed. They traveled through the air as two long streaks of light, far quicker than the Saint Kings. A few Saint Kings had already tried to free space, but the frozen space was not enough to halt the two swords. Around a dozen Saint Kings had even pooled their Saint force together to create a net and wait for the swords to fly into them, thus capturing the swords. Unfortunately, their net was no different than a spider's web to the swords, rupturing from the slightest contact. Suddenly, a heavy rumble reverberated through the sky as the very center of the dark clouds began to rapidly spin. An invisible pressure radiated from the clouds and enveloped the swords. All the people who had personally witnessed the metallic spirit at the tungsten alloy mine undergo its heavily tribulation had different expressions. They immediately yelled out, "Danger! Everyone retreat! These treasures are so powerful that the world rejects them. Devastating lightning will fall to destroy them. Everyone retreat, or you will be utterly doomed." All the people stopped their pursuit. Their eyes were filled with regret, but none of them dared to put their own lives at risk. Suddenly, the swords in the sky did something that took everyone by surprise. They actually transformed into two streams of resplendent light and directly plunged into the clouds. Boom! Immediately, a deafening sound rang out from high above. A bright white flash illuminated the world as shocking thunder erupted in the clouds. The tremendous sound wave actually caused the entire region to tremble. Countless volcanoes below began to collapse as huge waves were formed in the sea of lava below. A few saint kings even began to tremble without noticing. All of their ears rang. They seemed to have caught a glimpse of the two swords fighting the tribulation lightning through the clouds. What powerful treasures! All the people sighed in surprise. Just that had outclassed the ancestral weapons of the protector clans. The Path Lord of Carnal Desires and the 3 Class 9 magical beasts gazed at the sky as well with shock plastered across their faces. The power of the swords had completely overturned their understanding of any treasure. The lightning that had exploded in the clouds was no weaker than the tribulation lightning that had struck the tungsten alloy mine. It possessed the power to devastate saint emperors, yet the swords were actually able to fend off the lightning by themselves. Just that had surpassed saint emperors. The sound of thunder constantly reverberated across the sky. Every single boom was heavier than the one before. The power was absolutely terrifying. None of the bolts of lightning fell. They all exploded in the clouds instead. The sparks that they produced were like resplendent fireworks. My God, I think I saw the two swords collide head-on with the lightning. Even such powerful lightning is not enough to destroy them. Those bolts of lightning have all been smashed into pieces by the two swords, dissolving into countless sparks that expand in all directions. The treasures can actually take on such terrifying lightning, people exclaimed constantly. All of them were shocked. Quite a few people caught glimpses of what was going on in the clouds, bringing extreme astoundment to them. The swords continued to shine bright as they quickly moved through the clouds. Their glows had completely obscured their blades. Only 2 illuminating balls of azure and purple light could be seen from afar. In the blink of an eye, 8 bolts of lightning had fallen. With a final boom, the 9th bolt fell. This was the most powerful one out of all of them. Even if the previous 8 bolts were combined, it was not enough to rival the 9th bolt of lightning. The two swords remained the same as before, turning into 2 streaks of light before smashing into the bolt of lightning. Boom! The glows around the swords immediately dulled and the 9th bolt of lightning fell. However, their blades became even brighter. Not only had the 9th bolt failed to destroy the swords, but it seemed to have assisted them instead, allowing them to undergo a process of forging. The two swords trembled after dealing with the 9 bolts of lightning. They then emerged from the clouds. They produced a series of resonating pitches as the clouds in the sky gradually dispersed. Only after the clouds dispersed did the human and magical beast saint emperors begin to move. The 4 of them appeared before the swords as if they had teleported. They struck out as hard as they could, grabbing at just one of the swords. The 3 magical beasts grabbed at the violet sword while the Path Lord went for the azure one. This was because the 3 magical beasts all knew that they could probably only take one of the treasures with their combined strength since the treasures were so powerful. They would not have the power to take a second one. Chapter 1355, Puny Saint Emperors, 2. The Path Lord of Carnal Desires did not celebrate at all when he saw the 3 magical beasts reach toward the same sword while avoiding the one he went for. Instead, he grumbled inside, cursing how the other 2 Saint Emperors of the Tian Yuan continent had not come and missed such a fortuitous encounter. This was because the Path Lord knew that the 2 swords were no weaker than the ancestral weapons of the protector clans. He knew that they were actually even more powerful than them. Even Saint Emperors might not have been able to subdue the swords from how they repelled the tribulations before. There were 4 Saint Emperors present in total, but 3 of them were magical beasts, and he was the only human. Even when he knew that it was impossible for him to subdue even just one of the swords, he could only reluctantly try. The 2 swords were enveloped by a resplendent glow of their respective color. The glows obscured the blades of the swords, making them blurry. The Path Lord and the 3 magical beasts grabbed toward the sword hilts at the same time. They had all made preparations for any sudden changes. Not only had they coated their hands with powerful saint force, but even their bodies flickered with light as powerful energy formed a protective barrier around them. However, the moment they came in contact with the glow around the swords, blood flew from their hands. The glows did not just possess a decorative purpose, they had offensive abilities as well. The light pierced through the protection of Saint Force around the Saint Emperors and reduced them to a bloody mess in a single moment. The 4 Saint Emperors immediately withdrew their hands. They were covered with densely packed gashes, some of which even revealed the white bone beneath. The Saint Emperors were shocked. The 4 of them had already arrived at the apex of the world with their strength, yet they could not even touch the 2 swords. The power of the swords completely surpassed any of their understanding in regard to treasures of the world. There had never been such an extraordinary treasure that had appeared in the world, where even Saint Emperors could not touch them. How could they be subdued? These treasures really cannot be taken by force. They can only be received through luck, mumbled the ancestral emperor of the Felicity Empire. His face was filled with joy. Since Saint Emperors were unable to take them by force, the Saint Kings would obviously have a chance at obtaining a sword for themselves as well. The ancestral emperor immediately dismissed his thoughts, closed his eyes, and began to attempt to connect with the treasures through some special means. All the people in the surroundings who used swords copied the ancestral emperor. Some of them sent a strand of their soul, some devoted their minds to it, and others tried to use their understanding of swords to gain the recognition of the treasures and get the treasures to accept them as their masters out of their own accord. There were countless different methods. Over 10 kilometers away, the experts of the 100 races had all returned. They all remained in the distance as they attentively watched. They did not get any closer than that, nor did they plan on taking part in taking the treasures for themselves. Hank, are you certain that the 2 powerful swords are not treasures nurtured by the world, but forged by someone? A thin, old woman asked with a husky voice. Her pupils were jade green, and at a closer inspection, it seemed like 2 green flames leaped about her eyes. She was a flame demon and a Saint King at great perfection. The flame demons were naturally blessed with power over fire. They possessed a green flame within them at birth. The flame could not burn any objects, only life, causing it be known as demon fire. Beside her, the dwarf with the heavens guard sternly nodded. He said, "Please do not doubt the judgment of this dwarven king. If we dwarves claim that we are only the second best at forging weapons, then no one in the world can claim that they are first. In my experience, I am extremely certain that the 2 swords were forged by someone and not nurtured by the world. The 2 swords possess unfathomable power as soon as they were forged, so just how terrifying is the person who forged the swords? I never thought that there would actually be such a great expert on the Tianyuan continent." A dark-furred lycanthrope sighed in surprise. The person who has forged the 2 swords has probably already surpassed Saint Emperors and reached the origin realm. He's at the same level as the existence in Mercenary City, said an extremely pretty woman. She only seemed to be in her 20s and possessed enchanting beauty. However, her lower half was a snake's body. She was an expert of the Lamias, also a part of the 100 races. If it really is an origin realm expert, that's not necessarily good for us, said an 11 expert. She was also a fairly young woman, possessing an enchanting figure but with a tinge of divinity. Her voice was as pleasant as a lark's song. However, her true age was nowhere near how old she seemed. She was a Saint King at great perfection who had lived for thousands of years. The 3 Class 9 magical beasts in the air all revealed rather ugly expressions. They could not even touch a sword when they worked together, so it was rather embarrassing for them. Even if it was difficult for them to take away the swords, they could not leave after such an embarrassing situation. A sliver of maliciousness had even appeared in Kaiser's eyes. He furiously said, "I refuse to believe that I cannot subdue even a single sword." One of his hands immediately turned into a dragon's claw. It was powerful and covered with scales. He then reached toward the violet sword again. As soon as the claw came in contact with the glow of the sword, the screeching of metal rang out and some sparks flew as well. However, the outcome was the same as before. Before he could even touch the hilt of the sword, he was injured by the glow and forced to retreat. His claw had been reduced to a bloody mess. The scales on his claw had shattered and the white bone underneath had been revealed. Lankiros gasped before sighing, "This treasure is far too powerful. Even Kaiser can't touch the hilt. Looks like no one can subdue them in this world." At this moment, a figure leaped out of the lava. He shone with a dazzling light, like a miniature sun, illuminating all the volcanoes. The attention of everyone was drawn to the figure who had suddenly emerged from the lava. However, the only thing that could be seen was a blurry figure. No one could see through the light. The figure stood on a volcano. As the light around him gradually disappeared, his appearance was revealed. It's Jian Chen. He's actually always been hiding beneath the lava. It's said that Jian Chen has already disappeared from the Tianyuan continent for a very long time. Has he always been hiding beneath the lava, cultivating? Quite a few people recognized him as soon as Jian Chen appeared, and they immediately cried out. He was famous on the continent now. There was rarely an expert who did not know him. The experts of the 100 races became fixated on Jian Chen as well, the dwarven king Hank in particular. His eyes became extremely wide. He did not recognize Jian Chen, but he knew that it was extremely likely that the person who had forged the two swords was in the depths of the lava. Isn't that the ruler of the turtle clan? The experts of the sea race looked at one another. They were all members of the sea goddess hall, so they were familiar with Jian Chen. They recognized him with a single glance. A gleam of heavy killing intent immediately flashed through the eyes of Kaiser and Lankiros the moment they caught sight of Jian Chen. The Path Lord glanced over the two of them and smiled mysteriously. Jian Chen stood on a volcano. His face was pale and haggard, as if he was sick. Even though that was the case, his straight posture still managed to give off the feeling that he was immovable. His eyes were extremely bright and brimming with spirit. He slowly raised his head and looked at Kaiser and Lankiros in the sky. His eyes sharpened at that very moment. He sneered, "Kaiser, Lankiros, I never thought that I'd encounter the two of you as soon as I emerge from seclusion. That's just fantastic. Saves me from looking for you later." Kaiser and Lankiros' faces immediately grew cold. Kaiser stared at Jian Chen scornfully and sneered, "Jian Chen, your 3 magical beast helpers aren't here. You're nothing but an ant before us without their protection. Crushing you is a piece of cake. That would be the case if it was before, but you probably no longer have that ability today. Kaiser, Lankiros, it's time we settle our differences," Jian Chen said. Even though he appeared to be very weak right now, he was filled with confidence that he could deal with the 2 Saint Emperors. Chapter 1356, Puny Saint Emperors, 3, Such Arrogance, Jian Chen. "I'd like to see who will save you today," Lankiros coldly said. Heavy killing intent filled his eyes as he immediately moved against Jian Chen. He instantly appeared before Jian Chen by traversing several hundred meters with a single step and swung a palm toward his head. The palm surged with energy as it shook the surrounding space, causing it to crack. At the same time, the surrounding space froze as well. Lankiros had used his spatial powers to trap Jian Chen, preventing him from escaping. Lankiros struck out viciously and forcefully in an attempt to finish off Jian Chen in a single stroke and end all future problems. His enmity with Jian Chen had already reached the point of no return. If he let Jian Chen to continue to grow, there would be a day where he would be overpowered, and that day would be the day his life ended. Lankiros had completely forgotten about the threat of the barrier spirit from Mercenary City at that moment. He had already realized that Rui Jin and the other 2 were not present, so eliminating Jian Chen right now was more important than anything. He had even temporarily dismissed the powerful weapons. When Jian Chen wanted to strike back, a white flash suddenly appeared. Sangxiong had already charged into the space frozen by Lankiros and appeared before Jian Chen. With a wave of his sleeve, he responded to the Tiger Emperor's attack with a palm strike as well, blocking it for Jian Chen. The clash between the two Saint Emperors immediately resulted in an explosion of terrifying energy. The surrounding several thousand meters of space shattered and disintegrated into darkness. All the volcanoes in a radius of several kilometers collapsed. Lava shot into the sky like a fountain, dyeing the sky red. It began to rain lava. All the Saint Kings in the distance had retreated. Just the ripples of energy from a battle between Saint Emperors was enough to injure them. They were unwilling to suffer from something uncalled for like this. The volcano Jianchen stood on turn to nothingness as well. He used his glow to protect himself as he retreated in the air. He stared at Sangxiong in surprise. The two of them were not on any positive terms at all, so he did not understand why Sangxiong had stopped the Tiger Emperor for him. From afar, Kaiser's eyes narrowed. He stared at Sangxiong fixedly as a sliver of maliciousness appeared on his face. Sangxiong stood with his silver hair ruffling in the wind and his back toward Jian Chen. His robes fluttered wildly because of the ripples of energy. His face was peaceful, without any sorrow or joy. The Tiger Emperor's complexion became utterly horrendous. He coldly said, "Sangxiong, what are you trying to do?" "Tiger Emperor, we four races are facing something that can cause extinction. The matter at hand is to stop the world of forsaken saints. We must not fight within and cause inner turmoil. That will only weaken our strength. At the same time, Jian Chen's talent is extraordinary. It can be described as unprecedented, in fact. He will become a Saint Emperor without long, and this will increase the power we have to repel the invasion. That is something positive for us four races, so we should let go of everything that happened in the past," Sangxiong calmly replied. The Tiger Emperor did not waver at all. He asked in a heavy tone of voice, "Sangxiong, do you insist on protecting him?" Lankiros had already made up his mind about killing Jian Chen. He also knew that Jian Chen's talent was impressive, which was why he did not wish to see Jian Chen become a Saint Emperor at all. Such a breakthrough would imply that his end had arrived. "I am considering the greater good," Sangxiong said sternly and righteously. Jian Chen's impression of Sangxiong was altered drastically. He could still remember that he never took part the many times Lankiros and Kaiser came for him, even in the fight for the saint's fruit. Yet now, he ran the risk of offending the two Saint Emperors to speak up for Jian Chen. Jian Chen had an extremely good impression of Sangxiong now. Suddenly, a tremendous pressure descended from above. Seeing how Lankiros had been stopped by Sangxiong, Kaiser struck out without any hesitation at all. His right hand had been injured by the sword, so he used his left. The hand had transformed into a powerful claw, stabbing toward the center of Jian Chen's forehead with lightning-like speed. Sangxiong became stern. He was unable to stop two Saint Emperors all by himself. When he wanted to take Jian Chen and flee with his supreme speed, Lankiros attacked him, preventing him from saving Jian Chen. The three Class 9 magical beasts had moved away from the treasure, so a few Saint Kings moved. They ignored the battle between the Saint Emperors and went for the sword, all surrounding it. However, none of them dared to touch the weapon. Instead, they tried various methods to subdue it, and some of them had even tried dripping their blood on the sword. "Arg!" A miserable cry rang out. A Saint King had tried to fuse a strand of his soul into the sword, but it had been wiped out mercilessly. It injured his soul, causing him to pale. A dazzling white light condensed in Jian Chen's right hand. It radiated with shocking sword chi as he stabbed it at Kaiser's claw. Ding! The claw was very tough. When Jian Chen's sword chi collided with it, the screeching of metal rang out. Afterward, a few droplets of bright, red blood flew into the air. Every single droplet of blood pulsed with a powerful energy. Kaiser violently trembled as disbelief filled his face. His left hand had actually been injured by Jian Chen. There was a bone-deep wound on one of his fingers, which took him by utter shock. After all, he was a Class 9 magical beast and his original form was a mutated earthworm. Both his battle prowess and defense was more powerful than magical beasts at the same level as him. "What did you use?" Kaiser asked heavily. He could tell with a single glance that Jian Chen was not a Saint Emperor yet. The reason Jian Chen had been harm him was all because of that bright, white light. He had never seen such an odd and powerful energy. However, there was something familiar about it. It seemed like sword chi, yet it was not. "The way of the sword," Jian Chen said emotionlessly, and his face paled even more. Afterward, with a single gesture, the two swords that had just been forged immediately flew down as long streaks of light. They immediately appeared beside Jian Chen, sticking to his back as a cross. Jian Chen drew the Ziying sword from his back and poured chaotic force into it, causing it to immediately erupt with a violet glow. The light had basically encased Jian Chen but did not harm him at all. Everyone, including the Saint Emperors and the Saint Kings who had attempted to take the swords for themselves, became stunned. Disbelief was written all over their faces. Kaiser, Lankiros, and the Path Lord's eyes had almost popped out. They had a deep understanding of the power of the two swords. It was impossible for Saint Emperors to subdue them, and if Origin Realm experts did not appear, no one could do anything to the swords. Yet right now, the two swords allowed Jian Chen to wield them obediently. The powerful glow from the swords that even the Saint Emperors could do nothing about did not harm him either, which took them by disbelief. They had even begun to doubt whether their eyes were working or not. "How is this possible? How can you subdue the two swords? How did you do it?" the Path Lord asked in shock. "It was me who forged them, so why describe it as subduing?" Jian Chen answered. However, what he said was like a bolt from the blue to the Path Lord, Tiger Emperor, and Kaiser. They all became dazed from the shock they felt. It really is him who forged the swords. I never thought that there would be such a great senior on the Tian Yuan continent. I, the glorious king of the dwarves, must ask him about his method of forging. Once we dwarves learn such an extraordinary method, it will be a new era. A new era of blacksmithing will begin, Hank said excitedly. His face was flushed. The other experts of the 100 races said nothing. They all just stared at Jian Chen. They did not know Jian Chen's background, but they knew that there was rarely anyone who could match up to him if he wielded the swords. Just the two swords themselves can harm Saint Emperors. Now coupled with that young man's strength. There is no one who can take him on in this world. Probably only the world of Forsaken Saints possess opponents for him, the elven expert sighed in surprise. She could sense that the young man had suddenly become rather terrifying now that he wielded the two swords. The other members of the 100 races silently nodded and agreed with the elven expert. Suddenly, a clear resonance came from the sword and knocked everyone back to their senses. The resonance was long and rang through the surroundings. The Ziying sword surged with sword chi as it glowed bright with a violet light, enough to rival the glow of the sun and moon. It illuminated the entire place, as if the world had become violet. Jian Chen struck out. He used the illusory flash and shot toward Kaiser as a blur. He stabbed out with the Ziying sword. It shot toward Kaiser's chest as a streak of violet lightning. The moment Jian Chen struck out, he seemed to have fused with the sword in his hand. He had become the sword and the sword was him. They became one entity, inseparable. Kaiser's face drastically changed. He knew the power of the Ziying sword extremely well. He was extremely fearful of the two swords, so he dared not to take them head-on at all. He tried to dodge. However, he discovered, to his shock, that it had already locked onto his presence. He could not avoid it no matter how he tried. After Jian Chen had fused with the sword, he had become even faster than the illusory flash. He became a streak of violet light, reaching unbelievable speeds. Kaiser angrily roared and a layer of scales appeared on him. He transformed into a half-human, half-dragon form and placed his claws before him as well. Magical beasts rarely used weapons or armor, and this was the same for Kaiser. His body was the best armor while his claws were his sharpest weapons. The violet light stabbed into Kaiser's claws. They failed to stop the light at all. They were insignificantly fragile before the violet light. The streak of light pierced the two claws like a hot knife through butter before piercing Kaiser's chest in the end. It left behind an almost undetectable wound. The violet light did not stop there. Instead, it continued without slowing down at all, rushing toward Lankiros and piercing him as well. Only a shallow gash appeared on his chest. Kaiser and Lankiros suddenly froze. The scales and clothes on the upper half of Kaiser's body was reduced to dust, revealing his burly chests, and on there, a droplet of blood slowly rolled down. Chapter 1357, Taking the World by Shock. Kaiser and the Tiger Emperor became sheet white as a streak of blood ran from the corner of their lips. They were stunned, only shock and disbelief remained. Behind the two of them, the violet light around Jian Chen vanished. He carried the azure sword on his back as he looked at the two of them with the violet sword in hand. I won't kill you today in consideration of the world. The war between the world of forsaken saints is about to erupt. If you perform meritorious service, I will let the past go. Otherwise, I will never let the two of you off. Kaiser and the Tiger Emperor stood there without moving. They were stupefied, as if their souls had flown away. The moment the violet light passed through them, their organs were instantly turned to mush. They believed that Jian Chen could have turned their souls to mush as well if he had wanted to. The violet light was just far too terrifying. It did not need to strike their souls. Any part of their body would have been enough to wipe out their souls. This was because they did not possess the strength to stop the rampage of the violet sword chi within them. The Path Lord in the distance stared at Kaiser and Lankiros in a daze before forcefully rubbing his eyes. He carefully observed every inch of their bodies before his eyes narrowed. His face drastically changed. He was no longer willing to stay any longer. He left as quickly as he could. He could already tell that Jian Chen's strength had increased by countless folds after he had obtained the swords. He was extremely terrifying, not an enemy that the Path Lord could take on. The group of Saint Kings were stunned by this as well. Jian Chen had actually defeated two Saint Emperors of the Beast God continent instantaneously before scaring away the human Saint Emperor. This all felt like a dream to them. It was difficult for them to believe what had just happened. Sangxiong became tongue-tired as well. He had even acted by himself to stop the Tiger Emperor when the Tiger Emperor had attacked Jian Chen first in an attempt to save him. He had never expected everything to turn out like this. With Jian Chen's current strength, he had no need for any protection at all. He could kill Saint Emperors as easily as killing ants. He was so powerful that even the powerful Kaiser and Lankiros could not fight back. At that moment, Sangxiong could not help but feel like what he did before was an utter joke. Sigh, Sangxiong secretly exhaled. His gaze toward Jian Chen became filled with mixed emotions. Jian Chen had grown far too quickly. According to the information he possessed, Jian Chen was not even 50 yet. There were many people who had not even reached Earth Saint Master when they were 50 on the Tian Yuan continent and Beast God continent, yet Jian Chen could easily kill Saint Emperors without even reaching 50 years of age. Even in ancient times, no one had cultivated so quickly. With a flash of violet light, the Ziying sword broke free from Jian Chen's hand and returned to his back as a violet streak of light. Jian Chen looked at Sangxiong and clasped his hands. I thank Senior Sangxiong for helping. Jian Chen's voice carried gratitude from the bottom of his heart. He only viewed Sangxiong in a different light among all the original Saint Emperors of the two continents. Sangxiong shrugged and said in a self-depreciating fashion, "With your strength, you have no need for my help at all. I have acted wrongly before and made a spectacle of myself. Senior's character has piqued my admiration. I still have matters to attend to, so I shall be leaving first. However, I will definitely come visit Senior in the future. Farewell." Jian Chen clasped his hands. He spoke extremely sincerely. The Beast God Hall of our Beast God continent is extremely important to the Winged Tiger God. Only the Winged Tiger God can enter the 99th floor. It's said to possess a great fortune for the Winged Tiger God. You must come to the Beast God Hall with the Winged Tiger God when you have the time and let him go to the 99th floor, Sangxiong requested. He knew that Jian Chen now possessed the power to take the young Winged Tiger God to the Beast God Hall. Jian Chen bid farewell with Sangxiong and left the volcanic ranges. He returned to the Sea Realm. Soon, the news that Jian Chen had defeated the two Saint Emperors of the Beast God continent in the volcanic ranges and had scared away the Path Lord of carnal desires spread throughout the continent. The entire continent was in shock, and even the experts of the four races were thrown into an uproar. The Grand Elder of Mercenary City, Changyang Zhu Shao, and the others immediately became stunned when they learned of this news. However, they had not witnessed the battle, so they did not believe it to be true. Only when all the experts returned to Mercenary City and began to discuss the events that unfolded did they reluctantly accept the news as reality. In the world, if we want to discuss who is the strongest below Origin Realm, it is definitely be Jian Chen. Once he appears, who dares challenge him? Even Saint Emperors as powerful as Kaiser and Lankiros can't even withstand an attack from him. In the current day, the two swords are undeniably the greatest weapons in the world. Once they appear, even the Emperor armaments of the Protector clans will be overshadowed. Mercenary City immediately began to bustle with activity. Saint Kings gathered in groups in the air as they enthusiastically discussed the battle between Jian Chen, Kaiser, and Lankiros. Changyang Zhu Shao, Changyang Zhu Yun Shao, and Changyang Zhu Yeyun stood before their divine hall as they listened to the surrounding discussions. All of them were extremely excited. As the seniors of Jian Chen, they all felt glorious and extremely proud of their great-grandson since he had reached such a high level of cultivation. Bai Yuntian and Changyang Ba obviously received the news as well in the Changyang clan of Lore City. Joy and happiness instantly filled their chests. They had received this news from the saint rulers of the Zhu branch who lived in the Forbidden Grounds, so it could not have been false. Has Xiang'er become a saint emperor? Bai Yuntian asked with a trembling voice. Her eyes pooled with tears of joy. This shocking piece of news was brought by the great elders. Congratulations, you have an extremely impressive son, a saint ruler smiled benevolently and amicably answered. In the blink of an eye, the saint rulers treated the couple in a completely different fashion. The entirety of Flame City was ravished with great joy. Yu Yu and Bai Lian could not be happier while Bai Hai laughed at the sky to release his surging emotions. Jian Chen had no idea about the uproar he had caused on the Tian Yuan continent. He had already returned to the Sea Realm by now and had entered seclusion in a desolate mountain range. The sword spirits had broken away from his soul after the swords were forged and had moved into the swords. In the past, Jian Chen was at the brink of death, and the sword spirits fused with him to support his shattered soul, allowing him to survive. A long time had passed since then, and his soul had still been bound with the sword spirits. Now that the sword spirits had broken away from his soul, Jian Chen's soul suffered a very great loss. His body was fine, but his soul was extremely weak, as if it had been heavily injured. In a gloomy mountain cave, Jian Chen illuminated the place with a luminous pearl and removed several canes of amethyst bamboo. Every single cane gave off a faint, amethyst haze, along with a light fragrance, which could make people feel at ease. That was the amethyst spiritual bamboo he had collected in the Xianhuang microcosm. The sap of the bamboo was extremely useful for healing the soul as well as refining and strengthening it. It was a priceless treasure even in the immortals' world. Wounds of the soul were not easy to heal. Jian Chen planned to use the bamboo to deal with the injuries of his soul. Chapter 1358, Sword-riding Jian Chen had collected several dozen canes of bamboo from the Xianhuang microcosm. Only a single droplet of sap could be refined from a single cane, so he could only refine several dozen droplets of the sap with the amount of bamboo on him. There wasn't much. Jian Chen treated the amethyst spiritual bamboo well since it was valuable. If it were not for the fact that his soul was left in a weakened after the sword spirits broke away and that he needed to be in peak condition right now, he would have never wasted such precious bamboo so easily. Jian Chen refined a droplet of amethyst sap from a single cane through a method he had learned from the sword spirits. It let out a faint amethyst glow while a mysterious energy pulsed inside it. It was a wondrous energy that could strengthen the soul. Jian Chen guided the droplet of sap to the center of his eyebrows. As soon as it came in contact with his skin, it immediately melded with the skin it touched, dissolving into a refreshing energy that nourished Jian Chen's soul. The droplet of sap possessed extremely great effects. Jian Chen's fragile soul actually healed at an unbelievable rate. A comfortable feeling filled the depths of his soul. It was extremely pleasant and Jian Chen could not help but deeply exhale. Jian Chen slowly closed his eyes as he sat on the ground. He became drunk off the pleasant feeling of his soul strengthening. Not only was his soul rapidly recovering, it became even more consolidated and even stronger than before. Half a day later, the effects of the sap gradually vanished. Jian Chen's soul had been healed by a large portion as well. Although he had not returned to peak condition yet, he could feel that his current soul was far more powerful than before. If his soul before was described as a handful of soil, his current soul would be an egg-sized rock. The sizes were different, and it was also much tougher than before. Jian Chen was overjoyed. He had originally thought that he would need at least several canes of the bamboo to make a full recovery. He had never expected that just a single cane would heal most of it. He was surprised by the powerful effects. Without any hesitation, Jian Chen immediately began to refine a second droplet of sap. A day later, Jian Chen's soul finally returned to its peak condition. Just 2 droplets was enough to allow his soul to become several times more powerful than before. Expanding his senses, he could actually engulf a radius of over 200,000 kilometers. This would have been unimaginable in the past. This was because a massive requirement of strength needed to be met just to increase his soul by 10,000 kilometers. My soul has already reached the level of a peak Saint Emperor or possibly beyond Saint Emperors, Jian Chen joyfully mumbled to himself. He had forged the azulate swords successfully. Not only could he use the way of the sword even more than before, but he could also learn many powerful sword techniques as well. Coupled with his strengthened soul, was there anyone in the world who was still his opponent, excluding Origin Realm experts? Master, you may have forged the azulate swords, but they have yet to become your fated weapons. Once they become your fated weapons, not only will you be able to continue comprehending the way of the sword, but the power of the swords will also increase once more. However, this process takes some time. It requires Master to fuse your mind with the swords. It's inconvenient right now. Master, we will teach you the most basic sword techniques first. After successfully forging the azulate swords, Jian Chen had formally embarked on the cultivation path of the way of the sword. Ziying and Qing Suo then began to pass on various sword techniques to him like teachers, pointing Jian Chen in the right direction on the way of the sword. This would allow Jian Chen to progress much faster than if he felt his way around. This information would allow him to avoid many unnecessary twists along the path. Ziying and Qing Suo were only sword spirits, but they had existed for far too long. They knew far too much and were like grandmasters on the way of the sword. They were extremely experienced. They could deal with anything that was difficult or anything that Jian Chen did not understand. The way of the sword is extensive and profound. It requires a lot of time to comprehend. I've only reached the very basics, having only just reached sword origin. There's still sword spirit, sword immortal, sword sage, and sword god afterwards. I still have a long way to go, Jian Chen emotionally sighed. He seemed to have come across a completely new world before him. Suddenly, Jian Chen formed a seal with his hand. The Ziying sword immediately produced a clear resonance as it flew into the air from his back. It became 10 meters long and half a meter wide in a single instant. It radiated a blinding, violet light, which obscured its blade. Jian Chen leaped up and landed on the expanded sword. He then changed his seal and the Ziying sword immediately shot off as a streak of purple light, leaving the cave extremely quickly. He had vanished into the horizon in just a single moment. This way of traveling was countless times faster than when Jian Chen used the illusory flash. Sword riding was one of the sword techniques Ziying had passed on to Jian Chen. It was one of the most basic skills for practitioners of the sword, so Jian Chen grasped it in an extremely short amount of time. The Ziying sword seemed to have become a streak of light, but it also seemed to have become a violet lightning bolt as it shot through the sea realm. It was so fast that even Saint Kings could not catch it. Jian Chen stood on the sword as his clothes fluttered in the wind. He gave off an unexplainable feeling. He seemed like a sword immortal descending. He stared at the blurry surroundings in a daze as he sighed in surprise. Sword riding really was just far too fast. Even with his vision, he was unable to clearly make out the rapidly receding surroundings. He had to use the senses of his soul to see them. Now that I've grasped sword riding, I am no slower than someone who uses space gates, Jian Chen thought. Space gates could cross space, traversing several tens of thousands, millions, or tens of millions of kilometers in a single step. However, he felt like traversing such a great distance with sword riding would not take much time either. In less than 2 hours, Jian Chen arrived at the Sea Goddess Hall. He stopped 10 kilometers from the structure and flew over with his 2 swords on his back. All the people that came across Jian Chen after he had entered the divine hall bowed to him and treated him politely. Even a few Saint King elders greeted him with smiles, in an extremely courteous manner. The name of the ruler of the Turtle clan had spread throughout the sea realm. Everyone knew him. He had caused ripples to travel through the entire sea realm, so the Saint Kings obviously needed to treat him politely now. Even hall elders needed to lower themselves before him. This was the benefit of strength. Respect came from the fist. Jian Chen met Yedrium in a majestic hall. Only the 2 of them were present in the quiet and cold room. Yedrium was not enveloped by any light today. Her appearance was revealed before Jian Chen. She was alluring like a goddess, her face dignified. "Are those the weapons you forged?" Yedrium stared at the swords on Jian Chen back in curiosity. Her expression was rather odd. Jian Chen nodded seriously and said, "Yes, I've already forged my swords and my strength has drastically increased. Even if the 2 hall masters come together, I can slay both of them easily. Your Majesty, the resurrection can be held now." Yedrium smiled. Her smile was very pretty, like countless flowers were blooming and displaying the prettiest colors in the world. She said, "You can now easily slay the 2 hall masters together? Jian Chen, are your swords really that powerful? Have you forged some weapons that are as powerful as Her Majesty's weapon?" Yedrium clearly did not believe Jian Chen. Even she was unable to easily slay 2 saint emperors. Jian Chen smiled and said, "My 2 swords might even be more powerful than the weapon Her Majesty once used. I hope that's true. That way, the resurrection of Her Majesty will be successful," said Yedrium. Chapter 1359, Tension 3 days later, Jian Chen and Yedrium left with the Sea Goddess Divine Hall. They proceeded to where the Sea Goddess needed to be resurrected. Over 20 Saint King elders went with them as well as several hall elders. The sea goddess required vast quantities of energy during her revival, so the energy of the world would move abnormally throughout the sea realm, alerting everyone. The purpose of the elders were mainly to stop the experts that would hurry over to see what was going on. They were not responsible for fighting. Yadrium flew in the air with the experts while Jian Chen stood on his violet sword beside her. He seemed very graceful, causing Yadrium and the Saint Kings to glance over. They all found it weird. They had never seen or heard of a method of flying as weird as riding a sword. They obviously found it to be extremely novel. The resurrection of the sea goddess requires the support of the 99 spiritual springs. These springs are buried deep and are formed from a vein of energy. It's impossible for people who are not powerful to find them. These springs are scattered throughout the sea realm. Her Majesty needs to draw the energy of the springs from a spot between all of them, and unfortunately, that place doesn't lie in our territory but in the territory of the Heaven Spirit Hall. This is why we're going over there right now, Yadrium explained to Jian Chen along the way through a communication technique, so he would be prepared. The Saint Kings behind them still had no idea where the Hall Master was taking them or what she was doing. Yadrium had not announced the sea goddess resurrection to them. She kept the matter a secret. No one else knew about it other than her and Jian Chen. It would go better the fewer people knew about it. Jian Chen silently nodded. Although they would be trespassing in someone else's territory, he did not feel pressured at all. Very soon, they had left the territory of the Sea Goddess Hall and entered the lands of the Heaven Spirit Hall. Hall Master, we 3 halls have an agreement, where we are not to trespass in the land of others without permission. An elder immediately spoke his doubts. He was an ordinary elder at the 6th heavenly layer. Hall Master, are we declaring war against the Heaven Spirit Hall? Are we changing the current situation and conquering the entire sea realm? A hall elder asked in doubt. He felt very disturbed right now. If that was the case, a storm would definitely sweep through the entire sea realm. Enough with the questions, Yadrium coldly and emotionlessly commanded. A layer of bright, blue light concealed her entire body, obscuring her appearance. The elders immediately stopped talking and quietly followed behind her. However, they were nowhere near as calm as they seemed on the surface. Now that the ruler of the Turtle Clan had become an emperor and coupled with his mysterious friend, it could be said that the Sea Goddess Hall currently possessed 3 Saint Emperors. They had completely surpassed the other 2 halls. Unifying the sea realm was not impossible. At the same time, the Hall Master of the Heaven Spirit Hall, who was nurturing his soul in a secret room, snapped open his eyes. They seemed to shine bright, which seemed terrifying. His eyes seemed to be able to pierce through space, passing through the various obstructions to see everything in the distance. Suddenly, he rose up from the ground and became extremely stern. He heavily said, Yadrium and Jian Chen have brought a great group of people to my Heaven Spirit Hall. What are they trying to do? The Hall Master suddenly felt rather uneasy because he had thought of something terrifying. If Yadrium and Jian Chen worked together to attack the Heaven Spirit Hall, he would struggle to fend them off with his strength. The Hall Master vanished from the room. Soon, an ear-piercing horn rang from the hall. Its sound reached places several 100,000 kilometers away. All the experts who heard the horn displayed different expressions. That's the horn of war. It hasn't been blown in forever. Is the Heaven Spirit Hall declaring war on someone? Once the horn is blown, all experts must hurry to the Divine Hall at once as reinforcements. At that moment, countless people emerged from seclusion. They hurried to the central Divine Hall as quickly as they could. None of them were weak, all saint rulers or saint kings. Not only did independent cultivators head over, but the representatives and ancestors of large organizations also went. Of course, there were also some people who fled from the territory of the Heaven Spirit Hall into the lands of the other 2 halls. They wanted to avoid the matter altogether. The Hall Master of the Heaven Spirit Hall felt threatened when Yadrium and the Emperor of the Turtle Clan had stepped into his territory without any warning, which was why the horn had been blown without any hesitation. He wanted to gather all the forces he had. In a very short amount of time, the Heaven Spirit Hall made all the preparations they needed for battle. All the people in the Divine Hall were ready to fight. The Divine Hall levitated in the sky as it glowed with a resplendent light. Various arrays had been activated, erupting with terrifying pulses of energy. They now waited for the arrival of Yadrium's party. However, they stopped only 100,000 kilometers from the boundary of the two territories. Afterward, the Saint Kings scattered in the surroundings to watch over the region, leaving behind Jianchen and Yadrium in the center. Jianchen looked around. All he saw was a desolate mountain range. The energy of the world was not dense either. He could not help but ask, "Is this the place?" Yadrium nodded and said, "Correct, this is the place. The energy of the world here is thin, but it just happens to be the center of the 99 spiritual springs. I will immediately begin casting formations to connect the 99 springs so that we can draw over all the energy in them. I cannot be disturbed during this process." "Don't worry, leave it to me," said Jianchen before leaping onto a tall mountain peak nearby. He sat down and expanded the senses of his soul to watch over Yadrium. Yadrium immediately got to work. With a wave of her hand, she cleared away several mountains and created a flat region of land before beginning to cast down the formation. The formation originated from the sea goddess. It was extraordinarily profound and complicated and was capable of drawing in all the energy from the 99 spiritual springs scattered across the sea realm. It was rather arduous to cast down even for Yadrium. The number of experts in the Divine Hall far away rapidly increased. People constantly poured in from all directions as reinforcements, waiting for the arrival of the enemies. Yadrium walked between the mountain range as she did all she could to cast the formation. The formation was extremely vast, taking up a radius of 100 kilometers. It could not be completed in a short amount of time. Jianchen sat on a tall mountain peak with the azulate swords on his back. He observed the surroundings with his senses while he continued to comprehend the other sword techniques the sword spirits had imparted on him. All of them were very basic. Other than sword riding, the rest were offensive in nature, but since they originated from a higher world, all of the basic techniques were far more powerful than Saint-tier battle skills. The sword technique that interested Jianchen the most among them was similar to the soul sword Jianchen had once used. The sword technique allowed the user to control the sword with the soul, but the might the technique displayed was incomparable to what he used to use. It could kill people from long distances. He could control the sword with his mind as long as it was within the region his soul could envelope. My soul can reach over 200,000 kilometers away. That way, I don't even need to set out to kill enemies 200,000 kilometers away. Jianchen's blood boiled. The power of the sword technique was so great that it could enchant him and drive him mad. He immediately devoted all his thoughts to it in order to grasp it as soon as possible. Chapter 1360, Resurrection of the Sea Goddess. In the blink of an eye, the group from the Sea Goddess Hall had remained there for half a month already. The days passed very peacefully. Jianchen remained seated where he was as he comprehended the sword techniques while Yadrium continued to cast down the formation. She had not completed it even after half a month. The Heaven Spirit Hall had maxed out their defenses after half a month of preparation. All the experts who were supposed to come had come to the Heaven Spirit Hall. Of course, there were also a few people who completely ignored the war horn of the Heaven Spirit Hall, continuing with what they were doing. All the experts gathered in the Divine Hall began to wonder what they were doing after half a month of tense waiting without seeing their enemies at all. The Sea Goddess Hall still hasn't attacked yet. Are they afraid? The Hall Master of the Sea Goddess Hall and the Emperor of the Turtle Clan can overthrow the Heaven Spirit Hall easily if they work together. But why have they never attacked? Have the people of the Sea Goddess Hall learned that our Hall Master has contacted the Hall Master of the Serpent God Hall and that he might be hiding in the shadows, waiting for an opportunity to strike? The Hall Master of the Sea Goddess Hall and the Emperor of the Turtle Clan aren't confident that they can deal with the two Hall Masters, which is why they still haven't come. A Hall Elder overheard some discussions and immediately sneered unhappily. What do you know? Our Heaven Spirit Hall is an ancient force that has existed for several 100,000 years. Although we've never had someone who surpassed Emperor, we've had quite a few Emperors throughout history. Our heritage is so great that we obviously have our methods to deal with Emperors. Even without the Serpent God Hall's assistance, we can fend off the two Emperors just by ourselves. Of course. We have existed in the sea realm for several 100,000 years. We are so deeply rooted that we've experienced all sorts of disasters, yet aren't we still firmly rooted? Even if the Sea Goddess Hall sends for Emperors this time, they won't be able to defeat us, another Hall Elder to the side immediately added. The Hall Master of the Heaven Spirit Hall stood on the highest floor of the Divine Hall as usual. He gazed into the distance and mumbled, Yadrium and the ruler of the Turtle Clan have stayed in my territory for so long already. Why have they remained in the same position without moving at all? The Hall Master could sense Jianchen and Yadrium's position from the Divine Hall, but he was unable to tell what they were doing. He could sense them not due to his ability but by using the Divine Hall through a secret technique. His senses were unable to reach so far away, unless some earth-shaking battle occurred. Soon afterward, the Hall Master sent some people to go scout out the situation and gain an idea of what the Hall Master of the Sea Goddess Hall and the Emperor of the Turtle Clan were doing. However, the report he received was that the people were unable to approach the region at all. They were all stopped by the Saint Kings of the Sea Goddess Hall. Even after sneaking and using secret techniques, they would be forced away by a sword chi out of nowhere. They were unable to get close at all. As that all happened, the news that the Sea Goddess Hall had invaded the Heaven Spirit Hall spread across the entire sea realm, causing a great commotion. Everyone heard about how the Hall Master and the Emperor of the Turtle Clan had both settled in a desolate mountain range, drawing over many people to see what was going on. However, they were all stopped 10,000 kilometers away by the Saint Kings of the Sea Goddess Hall. In the blink of an eye, another half a month passed. After one whole month, Yadrium had finally completed the formation. She said to Jianchen, "We're all ready now. Get Her Majesty to start." Jianchen opened his eyes as he sat on the mountain peak. He stood up and said, "Hall Master, you've expended a lot of energy. Use the time to recover as soon as possible. I'll protect you." With a flip of his hand, the Sea Goddess Divine Hall immediately appeared in his hand before taking to the air. It turned into a 3,000-meter-tall Divine Hall in the blink of an eye. The Sea Goddess illusory figure appeared before the Divine Hall. This was a clone of her created from a strand of her soul. Her hands slowly swept through the air along an odd trajectory, as if she was using some mysterious power in the surroundings. In a single instant, the mountains all flashed. Within a radius of 100 kilometers, every single mountain glowed with blue light as a vast formation appeared. Jianchen levitated high in the air as he looked at the formation below on the 10-meter-long Ziying sword. The huge formation had taken Yadrium a whole month to cast down, but only the Sea Goddess could activate it. As the formation was activated, the surrounding energy of the world became extremely unstable. Vast amounts of energy began to gather from all directions, as if it was all being absorbed by the formation. It was pitch black in the center of the formation. The space there distorted, making it completely impossible to see what was going on. However, all the energy that had been absorbed by the formation entered the whole after it had been refined. Condense, vast energy of the world. The Sea Goddess called out and immediately began to create hand seals. The formation suddenly changed. It let out a bright blue light and quickly began to spin. At the same time, 99 similar pillars of blue light rose into the sky in various places throughout the sea realm. They weaved into a band of light, which shot across the sky, traveling toward the formation at an extremely fast speed. Every pillar of light was condensed from pure water-attributed energy. Tremendous energy pulsed within. Not only did the activation of the formation draw in the energy of the 99 springs, but it also absorbed the energy in the surroundings as well. The energy of the world in the sea realm was affected, gathering together like blood. The energy required for the resurrection of the sea goddess was extremely great. She had already drawn over all the energy of the world in the sea realm. The phenomenon could be described as unprecedented. The abnormal movements of the energy had thrown the entire sea realm into shock and horror. Many people had no idea what was going on, and everyone in seclusion immediately stopped and emerged because cultivating with such violent energy of the world would only be detrimental. What's happening? Why is all the energy of the world flowing in one direction? Let's go check out the place where all the energy is gathering and find the reason. More and more people either flew or rode various mounts in the direction the energy was gathering. At that moment, the sea realm was bustling. People surged about as great swathes of people traveled toward the formation. This included many human and magical beast foreigners. The vast energy in the desolate mountain range had already transformed into a destructive storm. The formation below grew brighter and brighter as it gathered the energy faster and faster. All the energy of the world ended up gathering in the black hole in the center of the formation. Jian Chen squinted his eyes at the black hole and thought to himself, I'll definitely be able to cultivate very fast in there. I might even be able to reach the 5th layer. However, Jian Chen only thought about the possibility. All the energy in the sea realm had gathered there. It would take a heavy toll on the land. With a heavy sound, the door of the sea goddess divine hall swung open and a thumb-sized bead of the sea goddess soul floated out, slowly falling into the black hole at the center. Jian Chen's eyes narrowed. He discovered that the bead was very similar to the protective beads Rui Jin, Heiyu, and Hong Lian possessed. It seemed exactly the same. I never thought that the winged tiger god's treasured beads actually possessed such powerful effects. Not only can it protect the soul and nullify all soul attacks, but it has also allowed the sea goddess soul to exist for so long as well, Jian Chen thought. He knew that the sea goddess had passed away long ago and that it was all because of the winged tiger god that her soul still remained without dispersing. Jian Chen, the materials, the sea goddess voice rang through Jian Chen's head. He immediately removed the reconstruction gel and essence of the spring of life that he had obtained from his space ring. He threw them all into the hole in the center. The resurrection was being held right now. If she was successfully revived, then there would be one more origin realm expert in the world, one that had existed during the ancient times. Yadrium silently healed 100 kilometers away. It had been very taxing to cast down the formation. She needed to recover to her peak condition in the shortest amount of time possible, or she would not be confident that she could stop the two hall masters when they worked together. She did not believe what Jian Chen had said at all. The Ziying sword silently hovered 1,000 meters away. Jian Chen sat on it as he guarded the entire revival process. He enveloped the surroundings with his soul. Even saint emperors would not be able to avoid his senses. The Heaven Spirit Hall was thrown into an uproar right now as well. Their divine hall was located in one of the places with the densest energy of the world. However, it had actually been sucked away, and they could not stop it no matter what they did. The hall master of the Heaven Spirit Hall stood on the highest floor of the divine hall as he gazed out in suspicion. He mumbled, "What is Yadrium doing?" At this moment, several pillars of light shot through the air at extremely great speeds. They originated from different directions, but all of them gathered in one place. Every pillar was condensed from tremendous pure, water-attributed energy. This is the energy of the spiritual springs. The hall master reclaimed and arrived outside in a flash. He looked at the sky and gradually became stern. Oh no, the resurrection of the sea goddess is underway. I never thought that little bitch and Jian Chen had already gone to the Sea of Despair and brought out the sea goddess divine hall. A heavy voice rang out from beside the hall master of the Heaven's Spirit Hall. A person appeared there silently. He was the hall master of the Serpent God Hall. The hall master of the Serpent God Hall had hurried over several days ago. He had remained hidden the entire time, except he was still rather pale, clearly still injured. Chapter 1361, Movements of the Two Halls. Then what should we do? The hall master of the Heaven's Spirit Hall asked in a heavy voice. His complexion was very ugly and the light in his eyes flickered. What else can we do? Of course we have to go and stop them. We can't let the sea goddess be successfully resurrected, or we will be in a lot of trouble. Remember all the things we've done in the past? The sea goddess already knows about all that. She also knows about the wild ambitions of the past hall master. If she is successfully revived, the first people she'll be eliminating will be us two hall masters. We might even die, the hall master of the Serpent God Hall heavily replied. The hall master of the Heaven's Spirit Hall fell silent. However, killing intent had already flashed through his eyes. The former hall masters of the two halls had always been searching for the abyssal crystal so that they could find the sea goddess divine hall in the Sea of Despair and devour her soul to replace her. However, the abyssal crystal only appeared in the depths of the Sea of Despair. Even emperors would struggle to complete the task and even suffered the risk of dying. The past hall masters never had the opportunity to obtain it, preventing them from finding the divine hall. The abyssal crystal finally appeared in the sea realm now. Meanwhile, the wild ambitions of the former hall masters had all been inherited by them, which was why the two hall masters had both participated in the fight for the crystal before. They had both sent experts to pursue Jian Chen in an attempt to obtain the abyssal crystal and find the sea goddess divine hall. There's Jian Chen and Yadrium guarding the sea goddess as she's being revived. Yadrium, that little bitch, may not have cultivated for as long as me, but her strength is unfathomable. Any one of us is probably not her opponent if we fight her alone. Coupled with Jian Chen, who's not weak either, dealing with them will not be easy, said the hall master of the Serpent God Hall. The hall master of the Heaven's Spirit Hall fell silent and said, Jian Chen is very impressive. He managed to wipe out a strand of my soul before injuring me, and I still haven't fully recovered even now. My battle prowess will be affected. Coupled with your unhealed wounds, we won't have any advantages by facing them in an open battle. The hall master of the Serpent God Hall glanced over in surprise. After some thought, he said, the resurrection of the sea goddess will take quite some time before it's completed, which gives us some time. If we prepare adequately and bring some powerful killing formations with us, it should be able to keep them busy for some time. We only need a split second to disrupt the process. We might even be able to obtain what we dream of through this. The hall master's eyes immediately began to burn with desire when he finished speaking. The hall master of the Heaven's Spirit Hall's eyes lit up as well. He became rather excited. There's no need for us to face against the two of them in a head-on battle. We just need to use formations to keep them busy. Let's go prepare immediately. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for us. The two hall masters both returned to their divine halls and started making preparations. The pure energy from the 99 spiritual springs poured into the central hole. At that moment, the energy of the world in the mountain range had become extremely dense, creating thick layers of mist. All the energy in the sea realm gathered there. I never thought that the resurrection of the sea goddess would create such a great commotion and that she requires the energy of the entire sea realm. Once she succeeds, the energy across the sea realm will be much thinner than the past. It probably won't be able to recover for several dozen years, Jian Chen thought to himself from on top of his sword. Several days later, Yadrium recovered her peak condition. She stood guard 1,000 kilometers away in the direction of the Heaven's Spirit Hall. Currently, the surrounding mountain range was filled with people. There were people below Saint Ruler, at Saint Ruler, and at Saint King. All the people had followed the direction the energy of the world headed. There were over 100,000 people now. The number constantly increased as well. At this moment, the elders of the Sea Goddess Hall came into great use. They all guarded a region, stopping the people 10,000 kilometers away and preventing them from getting any closer. As they all represented the Sea Goddess Hall and were all Saint Kings, they obviously possessed an extraordinarily great amount of deterrence. Even the Saint Kings that had hurried over from everywhere were not bold enough to start conflict with the Sea Goddess Hall. They wanted to avoid bringing trouble to their clans. Half a month later, almost 10,000 people had gathered. Many of them had come from the lands of the Serpent God Hall and Sea Goddess Hall, having been drawn over in search of the source of the abnormal activity that was pulling away the energy of the world. Countless rumors sprang into existence during that time. There were various kinds, but the most popular was a topic in regards to some great treasure. This was because all the energy in the sea realm had gathered in this mountain range, coupled with some odd phenomena in the sky. They were the best evidence for the rumor and made it even more convincing. There would always be people who could not hold back their greed before treasures. Some experts began to use various secret techniques to sneak their way in, but they were all invited to leave by the elders of the Sea Goddess Hall or killed off mercilessly by a strand of sword chi that appeared out of nowhere. A famed 16th star expert had even snuck into the region under the watch of the elders, but he was killed off mercilessly after just traveling several dozen kilometers. He had been cleaved in half at the waist by a powerful strand of sword chi. Blood sprayed into the air while his organs were obliterated. He ended up dead, shocking countless people in the surroundings. After that, there were far fewer people who attempted to sneak in. They could all sense that an even more terrifying expert was guarding the place inside. Suddenly, a vast pulse of energy appeared in the distance. A group of people aggressively hurried over from afar, and the ones leading them were all Saint Kings at great perfection. Behind them were several hundred people, and at least half of them were Saint Kings. The group was extremely powerful. It's the people of the Heaven's Spirit Hall. They've finally come. The people of the Sea Goddess Hall have broken the agreement and trespassed through the territory of the Heaven's Spirit Hall in such an open manner. The Heaven's Spirit Hall should have moved long ago. If I've guessed correctly, the Hall Master of the Sea Goddess Hall is present as well, or who else would have been able to order over 20 elders to guard this place? Even the Emperor of the Turtle Clan and his friend should be present. In that case, doesn't it mean that the Sea Goddess Hall possesses 3 emperors? The Heaven's Spirit Hall is going to be returning with more than they bargained for. Everyone discussed the events that were occurring. Although many of them were unhappy with the actions of the Sea Goddess Hall, they were not optimistic about the Heaven's Spirit Hall's strength. Warriors of the Sea Goddess Hall, you've crossed the boundary without permission. Please leave our territory immediately, and we will forget that this ever happened in the first place, a hall elder of the Heaven's Spirit Hall said with a deep voice. It was very loud, reverberating around the surroundings and reaching over 10,000 kilometers away. We are currently using this place. Elders of the Heaven's Spirit Hall, please make an exception. Once our esteemed Hall Master finishes with what she needs to do, we will leave immediately. A Hall Elder of the Sea Goddess Hall hurried over and clasped his hands at the group of people. This is the territory of our Heaven's Spirit Hall, not your Sea Goddess Hall. Without the permission of our Hall Master, you have no right to use this land. Warriors of the Sea Goddess Hall, please leave immediately, or we will no longer show any politeness, a Hall Elder of the Heaven's Spirit Hall said with a sunken face. A tremendous presence began to radiate from him, pressing toward the elders of the Sea Goddess Hall. Battle was about to erupt. The Hall Elder of the Sea Goddess Hall became rather stern. There were several hundred people against him, and half of them were Saint Kings. On the other hand, he only possessed around 20 people. The difference in strength was just far too great. They would not even be able to last for a moment if they really did start fighting. The Saint Kings of the Sea Goddess Hall were stuck in a hard position, but the surrounding temperature suddenly plummeted, as if they had been thrown into the Arctic. Even the hall elders could not help but shiver. Yadrium had silently appeared. She was enveloped by a bright blue light, which illuminated the surroundings and obscured her appearance. However, she radiated a terrifying presence that was enough to shake the surroundings. Just by herself, she had swept away the several hundred people of the Heaven's Spirit Hall. Yadrium's appearance did not make the group of people flustered at all. All of them remained composed. A hall elder bowed to Yadrium and said, "Esteemed Hall Master of the Sea Goddess Hall, have you forgotten about the agreement? Without our Hall Master's permission, you are not allowed to trespass in our territory. Please abide to the agreement. We're only temporarily using the surrounding region of 10,000 kilometers. No one may enter, and those who do will be killed without mercy," Yadrium simply replied. She spoke coldly and firmly, stunning the experts of the Heaven's Spirit Hall. Meanwhile, Jian Chen sat on the Ziying sword above where the sea goddess was being resurrected. Suddenly, something happened. The space around him violently distorted and was reduced to a blur. When it cleared up, he discovered that he had arrived in a world that was a sea of blood. The entire place was blood-red and endless amounts of vile energies permeated the surroundings. There were corpses there, and they all formed mountainous piles. It seemed like hell, which was hair-raising. The vile energies began to condense, forming barely visible rings that bounded Jianchen. This was a powerful trapping formation, enough to trap Saint Emperors for a while. At the same time, the rings of vile energies had a suppressing effect, preventing the trapped person from using his full strength. Jian Chen had been caught in the formation at that moment. Jian Chen did not become flustered at all as he remained seated on the Ziying sword. He slowly opened his eyes and gently smiled, "Hall Masters, you've finally decided to move after biding your time for so long. Humph, looks like you won't be able to remain as the Emperor of the Turtle Clan for much longer, Jian Chen. Today will be your death." The Hall Master of the Serpent God Hall's voice reverberated through the surroundings. Before he had come, he had planned it all out with the Hall Master of the Heaven's Spirit Hall. If the opportunity presented itself, they would first work together to kill the ruler of the Turtle Clan, as he had risen up just far too quickly. The threat he brought was far greater than the Hall Master of the Sea Goddess Hall. They were completely confident that they would be able to stop the revival of the Sea Goddess before Yadrium could hurry back. Chapter 1362, Battling the Two Hall Masters. Jian Chen looked up to observe the formation. He said, "This is only a trapping formation. Just this is not enough to kill me. Hall Masters, if you want to kill me, please use the killing formations you've brought." "Humph. Since you want to die so much, Jian Chen, we'll let you," the Hall Master of the Serpent God Hall powerfully replied. With that, a killing intent immediately permeated the surroundings. The landscape around Jian Chen changed once more. The bloody hell disappeared and was replaced by a hazy gray space. The trapping formation was still present. Jian Chen could still feel the mysterious force restricting him, suppressing his strength. The killing formation had only been added onto the trapping formation, having been placed inside by the Hall Master of the Serpent God Hall. The two formations actually seemed to have melded together. Suddenly, a beast's roar, almost draconic, rang out. 9 serpent dragons 10,000 meters long appeared in the surroundings. They radiated with terrifyingly powerful presences. None of them were weaker than Saint Emperors. This is a formation forged from the essence blood of the former Hall Masters of the Serpent God Hall. Every single formation is created from essence blood, Jian Chen thought to himself. His soul was so powerful that his senses had passed through the formation already, clearly seeing what had happened outside. The 9 dragons furiously roared as their teeth and claws flew over in a flurry, heading toward Jian Chen in an unstoppable manner. Every single serpent dragon was like a saint emperor. The tremendous presence stacked on one another as it pressed against Jian Chen, almost collapsing the space there. The 2 halls were great organizations that had existed for countless years. They had produced countless saint emperors during that time, totaling more than the Tian Yuan continent's saint emperors. Although no more Origin Realm experts appeared after the Sea Goddess, there were plenty of former Hall Masters with impressive talents who created earth-shaking Tian-level saint techniques and various killing formations. In the battle against the Hall Master of the Serpent God Hall, it was not that the Hall Master was weak but that he had been careless. He had not made sufficient preparations. However, it was completely different now. Both Hall Masters had made sufficient preparations to use this opportunity to take Jian Chen's life. Even though they were injured, they were still extremely powerful. Jian Chen, I'd like to see how you get through this formation. This is the 9 Dragons formation of destruction. It's a powerful formation created by a former Hall Master of my Serpent God Hall near the end of his life when he was a peak emperor. Even emperors will face life-threatening danger when trapped, let alone you, the Hall Master of the Serpent God Hall sneered. If he used the formation on Yadrium, it may not have been sufficient, but it was more than enough to make the ruler of the Turtle Clan suffer since he had only become an emperor recently. It might even be enough to kill him then and there. This was because the 9 dragons, which were condensed from the essence blood of emperors, could temporarily erupt with the power of emperors due to the formation. If they worked together, killing a newly broken through emperor would be far too easy. Jian Chen did not move at all as he sat on the Ziying sword. He used a sword technique as the Qing Suo sword on his back immediately shone with dazzling azure light. With a resonance, the sword flew from his back as a streak of light, shooting toward one of the dragons with lightning-like speed. Silently, the shockingly powerful serpent dragon dispersed, having been reduced to nothingness. How is this possible? The Hall Master of the Serpent God Hall noticed the changes in the killing formation the moment it occurred. Disbelief immediately filled his face. After dispersing the first dragon, the Qing Suo sword then flew toward the other 8 serpent dragons at an extremely great speed. It was like a bolt of lightning, making it difficult to distinguish through the naked eye. It seemed like a flash of azure light. In less than a second, the 9 serpent dragons had been destroyed by the Qing Suo sword. They did not even have the opportunity to approach Jian Chen, having been wiped out from several thousand meters away. This is impossible, this is impossible. The Hall Master of the Serpent God Hall became dumbfounded outside the formation. He had witnessed everything in shock. Disbelief was written across his face. The 9 dragons formation of destruction was something that his Serpent God Hall took pride in, yet it had actually collapsed helplessly before Jian Chen. He was unable to accept this. Boom! With a violent sound and a flash of dazzling azure light, the Qing Suo sword cleaved through the space and emitted a powerful force. It smashed through the formations of the Hall Master. Jian Chen reappeared. He remained seated on the Ziying sword just like before with only an azure sword hovering above his head. The Hall Master of the Heaven Spirit Hall had become utterly stunned as well. He stared at Jian Chen in shock and actually completely forgot to cast down a new formation. Formations are useless against him. He has a treasure for breaking through formations. Use the quaking thunders. The Hall Master of the Serpent God Hall cried out. With a flip of his hand, 2 quaking thunders that pulsed with powerful energy appeared. Jian Chen's eyes narrowed. He became surprised, because the quaking thunders in the hands of the Hall Master gave off energy pulses no weaker than Saint Emperors. Jian Chen had obtained quite a few quaking thunders back in the Divine Realm, but the most powerful one he obtained was only at the 16th star. He had not obtained anything higher than that, but the 2 quaking thunders in the Hall Master's hand was clearly greater than that. They were at the 17th or even 18th star. The Hall Master of the Serpent God Hall felt rather pained when he pulled out the two quaking thunders. Such powerful quaking thunders had already vanished for several tens of thousands of years. His quaking thunders had been passed down by a Hall Master several tens of thousand years ago. Every single one possessed destructive might able to blow Saint Emperors to pieces. He did not have much stored away anymore, and they would vanish after each use. However, Jian Chen grew at a rate that was just far too shocking. Now that they had completely fallen out, Jian Chen would cause the demise of the Serpent God Hall sooner or later if he was not eliminated. This was why the Hall Master had made up his mind to use everything he had to eliminate Jian Chen. With the whistling of wind from afar, Yadrium rushed over from 10,000 kilometers away as quickly as she could to reinforce Jian Chen as killing intent surged from her. The presence she gave off right now was so terrifying that it had become destructive, causing the surrounding space to violently tremble. Hall Masters, if you make Her Majesty's revival result in failure, I swear I will make you regret it for the rest of your lives, Yadrium called out. Her voice was thunderous, enough to cause the space there to shake. The loud voice echoed several tens of thousand kilometers away, shocking countless people. Chapter 1363, Ant-like Emperors, 1, That's the voice of the Hall Master from the Sea Goddess Hall. Who is the Hall Master referring to by Her Majesty? The Hall Master of the Sea Goddess Hall is one of the three great leaders of the Sea Realm. She's an emperor who possesses the greatest status. Just who can still be referred to as Her Majesty by her? Yadrium's shout had caused a huge commotion among the group of people there. Everyone began forming guesses as to who the Her Majesty was. They wanted to know who deserved to be called that way by an emperor. Was there an existence that was even more venerable than a Hall Master of the Sea Goddess Hall? Is it the former Hall Master of the Sea Goddess Hall? Is one still alive? Someone guessed. No. Even if the former Hall Master is still alive, they'll only be referred to as Old Hall Master, not Her Majesty. An expert dismissed the guess immediately. He was a 15th star expert and possessed a lot of knowledge. He possessed a certain level of understanding in regard to the inner workings of the three halls. Suddenly, the ancestor of a powerful clan suddenly seemed to think of something. His face changed drastically and he uncontrollably shouted, "Since ancient times, only our goddess has the right to be referred to as Her Majesty. Is the great goddess still alive?" What? The great sea goddess is still alive? That's impossible. It's been 1,000,000 years since the ancient times. What the ancestor said stunned countless people in the surroundings. All of them became taken aback by disbelief. That should be the case. What the Hall Master meant before was that the Sea Goddess was currently being revived while the Hall Masters of the Heaven Spirit Hall and Serpent God Hall are trying their hardest to stop her revival, another 16th star expert added. He was also the ancestor of a large clan. He was shocked, having been stunned by the great piece of news. My God! The great Sea Goddess is actually still alive. This is just unbelievable. Many people sighed in surprise. Only the Sea Goddess among the four champions of the ancient times remained, having stayed alive since ancient times until this current day. This piece of information was like a bolt from the blue to the entire sea realm. It caused a shocking ripple to flow through the entire sea realm. 10,000 kilometers away, the Hall Master of the Serpent God Hall was just about to throw the two quaking thunders in his hand when he suddenly heard Yadrium's angry shout from afar. If Yadrium made it over here, killing the ruler of the Turtle Clan and disrupting the Sea Goddess revival would not be so easy anymore. Yadrium was young, but she was not weak. The two Hall Masters had even begun to feel that her strength was unfathomable. Even in their peak condition, they were not confident that they could win against her, let alone now when they were both injured. Keep that little bitch busy. Leave this to me, the Hall Master of the Serpent God Hall said heavily as his eyes emanated with cold with killing intent. The Hall Master of the Heaven Spirit Hall did not hesitate at all. He immediately rushed toward Yadrium. Various formation banners had appeared in his hands. He tossed them out and they immediately merged with the surrounding space. The next moment, the space around Yadrium trembled and she vanished, having been trapped by the formation. The Hall Master knew that a single formation would not be enough to trap Yadrium, so he did not stop. He threw out formation banners one after another, casting down 8 layers of them in the shortest amount of time possible. Every single formation possessed shocking power. They could be used to deal with emperors, and there were even terrifying formations no weaker than the 9 dragons formation of destruction among them. The Hall Master of the Heaven Spirit Hall immediately let out a breath of relief when he saw that he had successfully trapped Yadrium. He thought, these formations are useless against Jianchen, but I don't think that's the case with you. He had originally prepared most of these formations for Jianchen, but seeing how they would be useless against him, he used them on Yadrium instead. On the other side, the Hall Master of the Serpent God Hall viciously smiled at Jianchen. He was just about to throw his 2 quaking thunders. However, Jianchen moved faster than him. The Ziying sword beneath him immediately returned to its original size and reappeared in his hands. It then shot toward the Hall Master as a violet streak of light. The streak of light was far too fast, and with the distance between the two of them, the Hall Master could not even react. The violet light arrived before him and severed his hands. Jianchen successfully removed the 2 quaking thunders from the severed hands before calmly returning back to where he had been before. The Hall Master produced a grunt when his hands were cut off. He immediately became rather pale. Violent light flickered where his wounds were as the residual sword chi ravaged his wounds, bringing him great pain. The pain caused his face to spasm. Blood fell from high up in the sky as his severed wrist spurted out large quantities of blood. The blood fell down like rain. This was the blood of a saint emperor. Every single droplet possessed the pulses of powerful energy. This was a rare treasure to ordinary people. Jianchen did not let it go to waste this time. He pulled out a large gourd from his space ring and stored all of it away. The Hall Master stared at his bloody wrists in shock. His eyes widened to the point where they almost popped out. His face was filled with disbelief as well as an unexplainable fear. This is impossible. This is not real, the Hall Master cried out uncontrollably. His gaze toward Jianchen became filled with dread as he rapidly retreated. Jianchen returned to a standing posture above the Ziying sword as he examined the 2 quaking thunders in his hands. He faintly smiled soon after that and said, "What a surprise! To have actually obtained 2 quaking thunders of such high levels, the Serpent God Hall really is an ancient organization that has existed for several hundreds of thousands of years." Fear was written across the Hall Master's face. He stared at the Ziying sword beneath Jianchen's feet with wide eyes and yelled in fright, "This is definitely not your own strength. Jianchen, what are you using?" Jianchen happily put the 2 quaking thunders into his space ring. He stared at the Hall Master and said, "These are the swords I've only just forged. With these 2 swords, I can kill saint emperors like crushing ants. Hall Master, use whatever you have." The Hall Master of the Serpent God Hall became sheet white. He stared at the 2 swords and a sliver of greed flashed through his eyes, but it disappeared very quickly. He then turned around to flee, no longer willing to stay for even a moment longer. Chapter 1364, Ant-like Emperors, 2, a gleam of light flashed across Jianchen's eyes. He sat down on the Ziying sword without moving at all. He formed a hand seal as the Qing Suo sword immediately shot off as an azure streak of light. It was a sword technique similar to the soul sword, except it was much more powerful. He could control the sword against enemies wherever his soul could envelope. After being strengthened by the sap of the amethyst spiritual bamboo, his soul had grown a lot. The radius he could envelope had exceeded 200,000 kilometers, so as long as the Hall Master of the Serpent God Hall was still in that range, he could not escape the attacks of the Qing Sua sword. Under the control of Jian Chen's mind, the sword seemed to have exceeded the speed of lightning. It crossed a great distance in a single moment, and even when the Hall Master fled as hard as he could, he was not faster than the Qing Sua sword. The sword pursued him as an azure streak of light. The Hall Master had discovered the sword behind him as well. Seeing how he could not avoid it, a sliver of determination immediately flashed through his eyes. He thought, that sword can display unimaginable power in Jian Chen's hands. It can cleave through emperor-level formations easily, but it's so far away from Jian Chen, and there's no one controlling it anymore. I refuse to believe that I can't even subdue a sword that has no user with my strength. I must take this sword for myself this time. If I possess it, even Yadrium will fear me, while Jian Chen will not be stronger than me if he loses one of his swords. The blood had already stopped flowing from the Hall Master's two severed stumps. He slowly swept his severed arms through the air, and immediately, a surging energy leaked out. It rapidly condensed into a 2-meter-wide shield on his left arm, and his body was covered with dense scales. Every single one of them flickered with light as energy pulsed from them. A hand condensed from energy had appeared on his right arm. It almost seemed to be tangible. He placed the shield before him and used the condensed hand to grab the Qing Sua sword. However, the Hall Master had underestimated the power of the Qing Sua sword. When it had just been forged, it was able to injure Saint Emperors without anyone controlling it. That was incomparable to right now, since Jian Chen was secretly controlling it with his mind. The power would definitely be greater than before. The Hall Master's hand was like a piece of paper when it came in contact with the sword. The Qing Sua sword punched a hole through it in an unstoppable manner before continuing toward the Hall Master without slowing down at all. Spurt. The Hall Master's shield shattered as the Qing Sua sword passed through his body as a streak of azure light. His defenses as a serpent dragon were unable to stop it at all. The Hall Master suddenly froze and his face paled in a single moment. A large amount of blood sprayed from his mouth in the form of mist, along with many pieces of his organs. When the Qing Sua sword passed through his body, an extremely powerful sword qi had erupted, turning his organs to mush in a single moment and dealing devastating damage to his body. A large amount of blood poured from every pore of the Hall Master, dyeing him red with his blood. He stumbled about in the air, having been heavily injured, and struggled to stay upright. The Hall Master was completely stunned. He found it difficult to believe how heavily injured he had become. Most of his body was destroyed and his organs were gone. Even most of the flesh and blood within him had been reduced to a mess. Only his soul remained intact, fortunately for him. Jian Chen flew over from afar on the Ziying sword. He grabbed the Hall Master with a single hand before flying back. He said, "Hall Master, no one can stop the resurrection of the Sea Goddess. You better come back with me to be judged by the Sea Goddess. You still might have a chance of surviving that way. Of course, if you attempt to flee by abandoning your body, it won't be my fault if I obliterate your soul." The Hall Master became ashen with that as despair filled his eyes. On the other side, the Hall Master of the Heaven Spirit Hall devoted all his attention to controlling the formations against Yadrium. The space before him violently distorted as terrifying ripples of energy radiated out, causing the space there to tremble. At this moment, a streak of azure light appeared with a flash. It flew over as a long streak of light, piercing through the Hall Master's chest with lightning-like speed and directly collided with the formations. Boom! With a deafening sound, 3 of the 8 formations cast down by the Hall Master were obliterated in a single instance, and the 5 other formations suffered from the heavy ripples of energy as well, becoming rather damaged. Spurt. The Hall Master vomited a mouthful of blood as he stared at the Qing Sua sword in disbelief. He tottered a few times in the air before directly plunging down. Boom! 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 The formations were damaged and no longer as powerful as before. Under Yadrium's full-powered attacks, they all erupted with powerful ripples of energy and sounds. Yadrium broke out of the 5 remaining formations. She shone with blinding blue light as the terrifying pulses of energy caused the surrounding space to ripple and give off horrifying presences. A fishman-like avatar stood behind her, as if it had fused with her. She rushed over with a trident. Although the trident was not the sea goddess weapon, it still possessed a might that could cause people to shiver. Thin, black cracks followed its gentle movements. They were cracks in space. Yadrium had not discovered Jian Chen when she had just broken out. As soon as she broke free, she discovered the Hall Master who was falling toward the ground. Without questioning why, she pointed with her trident and produced a powerful stream of energy that shot toward the Hall Master. "Hall Master, please stay your hand." Jian Chen's voice rang out, and at the same time, an azure streak of light flashed. The sword had arrived before the light had disappeared, having dived down from higher above. It blocked the stream of energy. The stream of energy struck the Qing Suo sword and loudly erupted. However, the sword did not waver at all and its glow remained just as bright as before. The stream of energy from Yadrium's trident had completely vanished. On the other hand, the Hall Master of the Heaven Spirit Hall had managed to avoid disaster. He fell from an altitude of several thousand meters, causing a mountain to collapse. He lay in the rubble as he stared at the sky in a daze. He did not return to his senses for quite some time. Only then did Yadrium discover that the Hall Master was heavily injured. Interest immediately flashed across her eyes. Chapter 1365, Ant-like Emperors, 3. Yadrium became rather stunned as she stared at the Hall Master of the Heaven Spirit Hall as he lay in the rubble. She could already tell that he was extremely heavily injured, basically incapacitated. She felt extremely shocked by this. She had not touched the Hall Master at all. With a flash of azure light, the Qing Suo sword shot off as a streak of light after blocking Yadrium's attack. It returned to Jian Chen's back as he flew over on the Ziying sword. He said to Yadrium, "The Hall Master of the Heaven Spirit Hall is very heavily injured. He cannot withstand an attack from you, or you might end up wiping out his soul." Yadrium looked away from the Hall Master of the Heaven Spirit Hall and became completely fixated on the Qing Suo sword on Jian Chen's back. She still could not forget the speed it possessed, and it had flown over, nor how it stopped a powerful attack from her without much effort at all. "Jian Chen, are they really the weapons you forged?" Yadrium asked. She found it very hard to believe that Jian Chen could forge such powerful swords. Jian Chen faintly smiled. "I can only be counted as partially responsible for forging these swords. There were other great people who assisted me in forging the swords while I only acted as a support. However, my swords should be greater than Her Majesty's weapon." "Hall Master, do you believe what I said before now? With these 2 swords, killing the 2 Hall Masters poses no difficulty at all." Yadrium stared at another mountain nearby and saw the Hall Master of the Serpent God Hall, who lay there as a bloody mess. Jian Chen had placed him there. He stared at the sky aimlessly as despair filled his eyes. Yadrium sighed inside, and the gaze she used to look at Jian Chen with was mixed with emotions. Thinking to back then, Jian Chen was still a puny saint ruler in her eyes. He was no different from an ant to her, yet only so long had passed, and he had grown to a level that even shocked her. Yadrium knew that she was not Jian Chen's opponent. At the very least, she was unable to heavily injure the 2 emperors so easily like Jian Chen. He's become even more terrifying with such powerful weapons. Probably only those who have surpassed Saint Emperor can keep Jian Chen at bay, Yadrium thought as she became rather gloomy. She could not help but think about how she had to cultivate for several millennia to obtain this strength while Jian Chen had become much more powerful in just a few decades. She found this very disturbing. Our world is currently faced with the threat of the world of forsaken saints. If we don't have enough strength, it might be the end of the world when the other world attacks us. We just happen to be in need of strength. Hall Master, I feel that we shouldn't kill the two of them right now. Saint Emperors are just far too rare after all. Our power grows stronger with every Saint Emperor standing on our side. What do you think, Your Majesty? Jian Chen asked. He really did have some enmity with the two Hall Masters, but during this sensitive period of time, he was willing to eliminate the threat of the foreign world than to settle his disagreements. Yadriam put away her trident and the powerful presence around her gradually vanished. After a moment of silent thought, she nodded, "You're right. The world of forsaken saints is just far too powerful. If we turn on each other right now, we'll be doomed for sure. Let's not take their lives right now, but their final fate still has to be determined by Her Majesty." Afterward, Yadriam brought the two Hall Masters together before sealing up their strength with a secret technique to prevent them from escaping if they recovered. Jian Chen took away their space rings without any mercy at all. He found a large amount of wealth in there, and the greatest things he obtained were 8 quaking thunders enough to injure Saint Emperors. Without long, the news of the two Hall Masters' defeat by Yadriam and Jian Chen's hand spread amongst the others, throwing them into an uproar again. Many people had realized that the balance of the Sea Realm, which had remained in balance for countless years, was about to change. Both the status and fame of the Turtle Clan skyrocketed after the battle, enough to make everyone fear them. Although there were still not a lot of people who viewed the Turtle Clan's own strength with any importance, they would never fall as long as their emperor was present. The Turtle Clan would be able to stand at the peak of the Sea Realm forever, becoming just as great as the 3 halls. All of the experts that belonged to the Heaven's Spirit Hall returned gloomily after their emperor was captured. A few people believed that the Heaven's Spirit Hall had fallen completely, breaking away from the group on the journey back. They left by themselves and broke away from the Heaven's Spirit Hall permanently. The capture of the two Hall Masters spread through the Sea Realm like wildfire and shocked everyone. The patriarch of a tribe by the name of Kaler had been utterly exhausted from worry recently. His daughter Kaya had obtained the cultivation method of the Octaterra Emperor from the ruler of the Turtle Clan and had remained in seclusion the entire time. Her strength had increased extremely quickly, which was something the patriarch should have been happy for since he was her father. However, he felt helpless over the fact that Kaya required expensive items to cultivate with. She required a large quantity of crystal coins. He had already used various methods to transfer most of the crystal coins that were supposed to go to other clansmen to her, but it was still not enough to fulfill her demand. He felt extremely pained over this. His tribe was only a medium-sized one. They were not rich. They possessed a low-grade crystal mine, but the amount they could collect in a year was extremely limited and only enough to support the cultivation of most clansmen. Kaya had basically used up most of it as she cultivated. The crystal coin split between the others had decreased by at least a half. It led to a lot of disagreement around the clan, so the patriarch felt very pressured as well. "I hope my good friends haven't let me down. I hope they can help me out and let my daughter power up," thought the patriarch. He could only place all his hopes on his good friends now. At this moment, a guard entered the room. He reported, "Patriarch, the patriarchs of the Tyt tribe, Herman tribe, Golden Sword tribe, Dakar clan, and Tingwei clans have come to visit." The patriarch celebrated inside. He said, "Let them in quick." "No, actually, I'll go receive them personally. I haven't met them in so many years." The patriarch of the Kaler tribe conversed joyfully with his old friends in a room. He had once roamed the Sea Realm with these friends, having sworn blood oaths together and gone through thick and thin. Their friendship was extremely deep, and they had all become leaders of rather large organizations. "My old friend, I've really run out of options, which is why I've invited you all here today. My daughter recently obtained an impressive cultivation method and has been devoting all her efforts to it. Once she completes it, she will become an emperor and will be able to reign supreme, said the patriarch. All the people present were surprised when they heard that. Their interests were immediately piqued and they asked, Kai Tian, just what powerful cultivation is it? How can it be so powerful? Reaching the level of emperors isn't something possible with just a high-level cultivation method. They were all saint rulers, so they knew that an increase of strength would not depend purely on the cultivation method. It also required a certain level of personal understanding and the comprehension of the mysteries of the world. Chapter 1366, The Disaster of the Kaler Tribe. This cultivation method was gifted to my daughter by the great emperor of the Turtle clan. It's said that once this cultivation method is practiced to completion, the person will become an emperor. Once my daughter becomes an emperor, it will be a joyous occasion to both my Kaler tribe and you all as we rise up, said Kai Tian. He trusted his old friends very much. After all, they had gone through trials of life and death together. All the seated people narrowed their eyes when they heard his words. They all became shocked, and after quite a while of silence, one of them asked, Kai Tian, you must have some connections with the emperor of the Turtle clan since he's given your daughter such a powerful cultivation method. But why haven't I ever seen you communicate with the Turtle clan? Kai Tian gently sighed, to be honest, we don't have much of a connection at all. It's all because of my daughter. My daughter was fortunate enough to meet the emperor of the Turtle clan one time, which is why she's been so spoiled by him and obtained this powerful cultivation method. So that's the case. A few years ago, I had heard that the Kaler tribe was connected to the Turtle clan in some way, but that was only a rumor back then and had not been confirmed. Looks like the rumor was false. The ruler of the Turtle clan has already become an emperor that can shake up the entire sea realm. Kai Tian, because of the emperor of the Turtle clan, it's only a matter of time before your tribe rises up. Once you become glorious, you must never forget about us. The old friends laughed with one another. They were all very happy, and Kai Tian was filled with pride. Kai Tian, you surely have another reason for calling us all together, not just to show off your precious daughter. Tell me, what have you encountered? With our friendship of so many years, we will help you no matter what problems you come across, said an old man. He seemed very old, but he was only around Kai Tian's age. Kai Tian gently coughed and said, my daughter's demand for crystal coins is just far too great. With the wealth of our clan, it's not enough to support her needs at all. In order to not get in the way of her cultivation, I ran out of choices, which is why I invited you all here. I want to borrow some crystal coins from you. I'll definitely return them with interest in the future. Isn't it just lending some crystal coins? Don't worry, Kai Tian. For Kaya to be able to become an emperor as soon as possible, we will support you with all we have even if we have to empty our pockets. Right, everyone? The speaker was a young man. He was the patriarch of the Herman tribe. You're completely right. I'll send over the crystal coins immediately once I get back, the TYT tribe patriarch added. He was extremely generous. Kai Tian's 5 good friends all expressed that they would support him with all they had, which put Kai Tian in a great mood. His daughter rarely asked him for crystal coins, but he knew that the amount of coins he gave her monthly was nowhere near enough for her cultivation speed. Kai Tian had basically used all the ideas he could think of to collect cultivation resources so that his daughter could become a powerful expert as soon as possible. Kai Tian's 5 friends all left, and a few days later, they all visited the Kaler tribe again with large amounts of crystal coins. They were warmly invited into the same room by Kai Tian again. Kai Tian gratefully accepted the space rings from his 5 friends. Checking them, he immediately became overjoyed. There were around 10 million to 30 million coins in each space ring, close to 100 million in total. This was a huge sum to the Kaler tribe. My friends have probably coughed up several years' worth of accumulated wealth so that my daughter can become an emperor soon. Once Kaya becomes powerful, I'll definitely get her to treat my friends well. Kai Tian was utterly overjoyed. His friends had brought close to 100 million crystal coins, giving him exactly what he required in this moment of need. Kai Tian became filled with gratitude as he swore inside that he would never forget the kindness of his old friends. At this moment, the door to the room opened and an old man rushed in a hurry. Kai Tian frowned. He was currently discussing some secretive matters with his old friends, so he obviously did not wish to be disturbed by others. Just when he was about to lecture the person, he forcefully shut himself up after recognizing the old man. He was one of Kai Tian's seniors who went by the name Kai Lu. He was not as powerful as him, but Kai Tian respected him deeply. Kai Lu glanced over the 5 people present in hatred before frantically informing Kai Tian, Patriarch, something bad's happened. The Tyt tribe, Herman tribe, Golden Sword tribe, Dakar clan, and Tingwei clan have attacked our tribe together. We have sustained heavy casualties and many are injured. We can't stop them anymore. What? Kai Tian was shocked. Disbelief filled his face because the patriarchs of the 5 tribes mentioned were right here, and they were his good friends. At this moment, Kai Tian's 5 friends struck out at the same time. Taking advantage of Kai Tian while he was dazed, they sent a palm toward Kai Tian and trapped him by freezing space. He could not avoid their attacks. Spurt. Kai Tian immediately vomited blood and heavily collided with the wall of the room, causing the entire place to violently jolt. Kai Lu drastically changed his expression. He glanced at Kai Tian, who was heavily injured, and deep sorrow filled his eyes. Afterward, he turned around and fled without saying anything else. We can't let him escape. We can't let any person of the Kaler tribe escape alive, or we'll be in trouble. Chase him, the patriarch of the Golden Sword tribe said heavily before pursuing the old man. However, inscriptions suddenly appeared on the walls of the room at this time. Kai Tian had already activated the formation that had been cast in the room, sealing it off and stopping the patriarch of the Golden Sword tribe. The patriarch of the Dakar clan examined the formation and said, "This formation is strong. It'll take us some time to get through it, but don't worry, we've already encircled this entire place. No one can escape. The news won't be able to leak out." Kai Tian stood up with difficulty. His face was pale as he stared at his old friends in disbelief. His heart ached as he said with a trembling voice, "Why? Why are you doing this? I have always treated you as my best friends. Back then, we roamed the sea realm together and stepped over countless corpses all together. Have you forgotten about the blood oath we swore before? Just when have I wronged you where the 5 of you worked together to deal with me?" The patriarch of the Tyt tribe gently sighed, "Kai Tian, have you really treated us as your friends? If you did, why have you never shared such a powerful cultivation method after you obtained it? We will share our joys and pains. Kai Tian, that was our oath from before. We never broke it. You wanted crystal coins, so we gave them to you, but your tribe wanted to indulge on the cultivation method of an emperor just by yourself. You're the one who's broken the oath, not us," the patriarch of the Golden Sword tribe coldly chastised. Kai Tian began to laugh as 2 streaks of blood tears rolled down his cheeks. He mumbled, "So you wanted the cultivation method of the Octaterra Emperor. It's a joke to think that I treated you as my best friends, yet you turn on me for a cultivation method. The blood oath in the past is a joke, and our past friendship is so fragile. I am filled with regret. I should have never believed you so easily. Not only have I doomed my tribe, I've doomed my daughter. Since it's the cultivation method of the Octaterra Emperor, the Emperor of the Turtle Clan probably used it to reach his current level of cultivation. Kai Tian, hand it over immediately and we'll still be friends. Once we all become emperors, the entire Seal realm will belong to us." The eyes of the Dakar clan's patriarch lit up as he eagerly demanded. The 4 other patriarchs' eyes began to burn with desire as well. Their breathing all became heavy. The cultivation method of the Octaterra Emperor was extremely tempting to them, and when they heard that the Emperor of the Turtle Clan had used it to become an emperor, their hearts all began to heavily thud. Kai Tian laughed at the sky. He laughed very crazily as energy pulsed from him. He then suddenly charged at the 5 of them without any regard for his own life. He wanted to bring the 5 of them down with him. He activated the attack of the formation as he did all that. Kai Tian, since the concept of brotherhood is nothing to you and you want to take the cultivation method for yourself, don't blame us for being ruthless, yelled the patriarch of the Golden Sword clan. Kai Tian's strength was similar to the 5 of them, and he was heavily injured as well. He was not the opponent of his 5 friends. He very quickly collapsed in his own pool of blood. His soul had been wiped out. Let's get through the formation as soon as possible and go find Kaya. The cultivation method of the Octaterra Emperor is definitely with her, the patriarch of the TYT tribe said to the 4 others as he fended off the attacks from the formation. The Kaler tribe was a medium-sized tribe. They had been around for some time, but they still lacked a heritage. The formation in the room was unable to stop 5 saint rulers. They broke through the formation very soon with their combined attacks. Outside, shouts of "kill" constantly rang throughout the Kaler tribe. All the clansmen were engaged in an intense battle against the other 5 tribes. A barrier enveloped the entire area, preventing the people of the Kaler tribe from fleeing. The disparity in strength between the 2 sides was just far too great. Corpses were littered across the ground and blood had formed streams. It was almost all from the clansmen of the Kaler tribe. Kai Lu stood outside another hidden room in the tribe. Given the current situation, he did not worry about disturbing the person inside. He used the most direct method of knocking on the heavy stone door. Very soon, the door opened and a streak of gentle light flowed out. Kaya sat in the center of the room in white clothes. She formed seals with her hands while her face was calm. She seemed otherworldly, giving off an almost divine presence. She seemed like a seated goddess herself. Kaya had undergone drastic changes by practicing the cultivation method of the Octaterra Emperor. "Uncle Lu, what has happened? You look so flustered," Kaya calmly asked. However, the presence she gave off changed when she spoke. The divine feeling vanished and she became ordinary once more. Kai Lu hurried in and said, "Kaya, flee. Your father's 5 friends have been blinded by ambition. They've actually turned on your father together, and your father's probably already in deep trouble. Even our tribe will face destruction. Kaya, go. You can't stay here any longer." Kaya was greatly surprised. She suddenly stood up and asked, "Uncle Lu, what is this all about? It must be because your father has leaked the fact that you practice the cultivation method of the Octaterra Emperor." "Sigh, I told him before that no one else can know of this. Why didn't he listen to me?" Kai Lu was filled with deep regret and disappointment over what Kai Yu's father had done. Chapter 1367, Destruction. Kaya arrived beside Kai Lu in a single step and grabbed him by the arm. She asked in a hurry, "Uncle Lu, what about my father? How is my father?" Kai Lu shook off Kaya in a single stroke and frantically pushed her out. He said, "Kaya, don't worry about your father anymore. You can't save him. Leave, or it'll be too late. You're the only hope of our Kaler tribe. You have to survive, so you can take revenge for all the clansmen who have passed away." "No, I must save my father." Kaya's face was filled with worry and panic as well as some fear. She could already tell the importance of the matter from Kai Lu's words. She was extremely terrified of losing her father. "Your father's already been hit by a sneak attack from 5 relatively good friends. They've probably come for your cultivation method. Dumb girl, you can't save your father. Even if you hand over the cultivation method, they won't leave anyone alive. Stop hesitating and go, Kai Lu said in a panic. He looked back from time to time as an uneasiness filled his face. Uncle Lu, you go first. I'll go save my father, Kaya firmly replied. She gently let go of Kai Lu's hand before rushing away with lightning-like speed. No matter how Kai Lu begged her from behind, he was unable to stop her. Boom! Just as Kaya emerged from underground, a loud sound rang out. In the distance, the ground cracked and earth was thrown into the air. Terrifying pulses of energy radiated from the cracks, and in the center of the explosion was a 10-meter-wide hole. It plunged straight into the ground. The 5 patriarchs slowly emerged from the hole, and in their hands was Kai Tian, who had already passed away. Father. Kaya recognized the flesh and blood in their hands with a single glance. It was her father. She was immediately devastated and let out a sorrowful cry. She charged over without any regard for her own life. Kaya, you've come just at the right time. Hand over the cultivation method you've been practicing, or you'll end up the same as your father, the patriarch of the Dakar clan greedily demanded. He looked at Kaya as if she was a huge treasure. He had been blinded by desire. He appeared beside Kaya with a flash and extended a hand in an attempt to capture her. You were the ones who killed my father. Kaya sorrowfully yelled at the sky. She was heartbroken. Tears poured down her cheek as she began to shine with blue light. A powerful presence radiated from her, and she firmly struck out with her hand. She began to fight the patriarch. With a heavy sound, the patriarch of the Dakar clan countered with a similar palm strike. Kaya's body jolted before being sent flying. It took her more than 10 steps to stabilize herself, and she left a deep imprint in the ground every step she made. The patriarch's body jolted violently as well. He swayed a few times while his face became filled with shock. He said, Kaya, I never thought that you'd have already become a 13th star expert. The 13th star was equivalent to the 1st to 4th heavenly layers of a saint ruler on the Tian Yuan continent. This was enough to be regarded as a peak-level force among small and medium-sized clans. It must be due to the cultivation method of the Octaterra Emperor. The cultivation method really is wondrous. The ruler of the Turtle clan has been able to become an emperor in such a short amount of time after practicing it. Kaya's strength had skyrocketed as well after practicing it. The eyes of the TYT clan patriarch lit up. He was extremely emotional, as if he had already seen the moment when he would become an emperor. We have to get our hands on the cultivation method, the patriarch of the Herman clan added. He seemed like an extremely young man. He was handsome and only seemed to be in his 20s at most, but he was also very greedy. The patriarch of the Dakar clan struck out again. This time, he did not hold back. A 3-meter-long spear appeared in his hands. It radiated with powerful pulses of energy. He stabbed it toward Kaya with lightning-like speed. He had even used his powers as a saint ruler to freeze the space around Kaya, so he could finish her off sooner. The energy around Kaya swelled and continued to radiate a bright blue light. She stared at the 5 people in pure hatred as she spread her arms wide. Countless specks of white light gathered from the surroundings, condensing into 8 spears. Every single spear was 8 meters long. Although they were blurry, a mysterious energy circulated within them. Rise of the Octaterra, single cut. Kaya cried out. The 8 spears immediately let out a dazzling light and smashed through the frozen space in the surroundings. They then shot toward the patriarch of the Dakar clan in a straight line. Boom! 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 The patriarch had already reached the 14th star and was at the 6th heavenly layer. He was just far more powerful. He used his single spear to receive the 8 spears from Kaya, and with 8 booms, earth was kicked into the air as the powerful ripples of energy expanded in all directions. The patriarch of the Dakar clan destroyed the 8 spears. Kaya had only just become a saint ruler, but the 8 spears she had condensed were very powerful. The patriarch uncontrollably retreated several dozen meters after handling the spears. He became disheveled while his clothes had been reduced to a mess. He had not been injured, but he was in a rather horrible condition. He did not become angered at all, and his greed instead became even heavier. He excitedly said, "This must be a secret technique invented by the Octaterra Emperor. It's so powerful that even when you use it, it's enough to force me back. This is equivalent to a Tian-level saint technique. It can be used at such a speed. This secret technique is even better than a Tian-level saint technique," the patriarch of the Tingwei clan excitedly added. He was rather eager to obtain the cultivation method. The Tyt tribe patriarch seemed to have reached the limit of his patience. "Quit dragging it out. Finish her off quick. Let's attack together." The 5 people struck out at the same time and used their full strength. They were all rather eager, so they went as far as to lower themselves to deal with Kaya, who had only recently become a saint ruler. It was almost impossible for Kaya to deal with just one of them, so she was even more helpless when the 5 of them attacked together. She condensed 8 spears once again to force back one of them, but she could do nothing about the attacks from the other 4. A spear pierced Kaya's shoulder, a trident produced a long gash across her chest, and the palms of the other 2 landed on her chest at the same time. Spurt! Kaya vomited a mouthful of blood as she was sent flying back. She became extremely pale. If it were not for the fact that they wanted the cultivation technique and did not want to kill her before they got it, the wave of attacks would have been enough to wipe out her soul. "Run, Kaya. Remember, you must take revenge for the tribe in the future. You must wipe out the Tyt tribe, Herman tribe, Golden Sword tribe, Dakar clan, and Tingwei clan," Kai Lu gloomily shouted as he charged over from afar. He carried a 14th star quaking thunder in his hand as he charged toward the 5 patriarchs. "Be careful, there's a quaking thunder in his hands," called out the patriarch of the Herman clan. He immediately froze space to trap Kai Lu. However, Kai Lu was already close enough to them and the quaking thunder had already been set off. With a great boom, Kai Lu was devoured by the vast energy released from the quaking thunder. The 5 patriarchs all retreated to avoid the ripples of energy from the quaking thunder. "Uncle Lu." Kaya produced a heart-wrenching sob. She felt utter sorrow. She constantly vomited blood as tears ran down her cheeks. The pulse of energy from the quaking thunder caused the barrier around the Kalar tribe to tremble and shake. Kaya glanced in the direction Kai Lu had vanished while reminiscing before spreading her arms once more. She endured the pain and her shaking body with gritted teeth. She condensed another 8 spears that shot toward the barrier. Boom! A huge hole ripped open in the barrier with a great boom. Kaya grabbed her father's corpse as quickly as she could before rushing toward the barrier. She did not look back at all. "Chase her down. We can't let her escape," the 5 patriarchs panicked as they all pursued her as quickly as they could. The battle in the Kalar tribe only stopped when they left. Only the people of the 5 clans remained scattered across the land. The Kalar tribe had been destroyed. Blood flowed like rivers while corpses lay everywhere. Chapter 1368, Revival of the Sea Goddess. 1. Kaya ran as fast as she could with her father's corpse. Tears constantly poured down her cheeks as blood dripped from the corner of her lips. Her eyes were filled with hatred and sorrow. The 5 patriarchs closely pursued her from behind. Every single one of them moved as fast as they could, and they even used secret techniques to increase their speed. They needed to capture Kaya. Not only was capturing her directly connected to whether they would obtain the cultivation method of the Octaterra Emperor, but it was also connected to their future fates as well. "We can't let her escape no matter what. It's said that she has some connections with the Emperor of the Turtle Clan. This may not have been confirmed, but we need to make sure. Yeah. If Kaya finds the Emperor of the Turtle Clan, we'll be dead no matter where we flee. The 5 patriarchs spoke with heavy tones. They were all stern. They had underestimated Kaya's strength, never having imagined that she would be powerful enough to smash through the barrier, leading to all this. Although Kaya was nowhere near as powerful as the 5 of them, she was no slower than them, and even faster in some cases. 8 spears had appeared behind her. They were blurry, but every single one of them gave off a mysterious presence as a mysterious energy flowed inside them. The 8 spears formed a 3-meter-long fan behind Kaya. A mysterious force radiated from the spears, causing them to fuse together. They seemed like a pair of wings from afar. The wings formed from the 8 spears slowly flapped, allowing Kaya to move extremely quick. Without the use of any other secret techniques, she had reached speeds that even 7th heavenly layer saint rulers could not attain despite only having just broken through. The 5 people became more and more worried seeing how Kaya grew further and further away from them. The TYT tribe patriarch coldly said, "We can't catch up to her anymore. I'll use a secret technique to mark her so it's easier for us to track her down." The patriarch immediately began to use a secret technique. A drop of blood flew from the tip of his tongue, vanishing into Kaya at a lightning-quick speed. This was his innate secret technique. Only his clansmen could practice it. Once someone had been hit by the secret technique, they could be sensed from a very far distance. It was very difficult to erase their presence. Over 100 million people had gathered around the desolate mountain range where the sea goddess was being resurrected. They all stood 10,000 kilometers away. No one was bold enough to try to sneak in anymore. The news about the sea goddess revival had spread across the entire sea realm during that time, attracting countless people to come witness the spectacle. Many people were emotional, extremely eager for the moment when the sea goddess would return. In ancient times, the sea goddess had devoted herself wholeheartedly to her people and committed great services for them. She had even cast down a barrier to protect the sea realm. She was the most revered person in the entire region. The times were different now and many years had passed since the ancient years, which was why the sea goddess no longer held as much prestige as before. Some experts had even become ill-intended, but there were still people who devoted themselves to the sea goddess. Not everyone had changed. 3 months later, the water-attributed energy from the 99 spiritual springs vanished while the formation stopped absorbing energy of the world as well. After such a long period of intense consumption, the energy in the sea realm plummeted. There was less than 60% of what there had been originally, and it would take a very long time to recover to its original level. The revival of the sea goddess just took up far too much energy. Yadrium sat on a mountain in the mountain range as she devoted herself to guarding and protecting the sea goddess. She had never let down her guard throughout the entire process, paying attention to the surroundings at all times to prevent any other people from coming to cause trouble after the 2 hall masters had. Jian Chen sat on the Ziying sword, which levitated at an altitude of 1,000 meters and continued to let out a violet light. He devoted himself to comprehending the sword, studying the basic sword techniques that he had obtained from the Azulite sword spirits. However, he did not forget about guarding the sea goddess during that time. He kept a sliver of his soul on guard to observe the surrounding radius of 10,000 kilometers. That way, he was able to pay more attention to the sword techniques. Suddenly, Jian Chen's face twitched and he immediately stopped studying the sword techniques. He opened his eyes and began to stare at the center of the huge formation without blinking at all. Yadrium sensed something as well soon after he did. She stood up as her clothes fluttered despite the absence of wind. She silently flew over from a distance. She was both nervous and excited. It remained pitch black at the center of the formation, as if it hid another space or world altogether. No one could see what was going on inside. Boom! 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 At this moment, a series of booms rang out. The formation that Yadrium had cast down actually exploded, producing thunderous sounds and causing the mountains there to shake and crack. Large portions collapsed as dust was thrown into the air. The entire region became engulfed by a thick layer of sand and dust. A powerful presence suddenly appeared and rapidly grew stronger. In just a few short seconds, her presence had reached a terrifying level. It engulfed the entire sea realm, as if a sleeping primordial beast had begun to awaken. Is this Her Majesty? Has Her Majesty been revived successfully? What a powerful presence. This presence actually makes my soul tremble. This is definitely from someone who has surpassed emperors. Is it really Her Majesty? The sea goddess has revived. After 1,000,000 years of slumber, the sea goddess of the 4 ancient champions has finally returned. The surrounding crowd of people buzzed with activity. Countless people loudly cried out. There was joy and excitement as well as a few people still filled with disbelief. They found it difficult to believe that the sea goddess was really still alive. As the sea goddess' presence rapidly soared, she slowly began to display her prestige just like a waking god. Very soon, the tremendous presence surged out of the sea realm and condensed under the blue sky outside. It gave off a terrifying pressure. No one knew just how much more tremendous the pressure was compared to Saint Emperors, but as soon as it radiated out, it was sensed by all the experts in the world. The 4 races gathered in Mercenary City all gazed in the direction of the sea realm in shock. The Path Lord of Carnal Desires and the 3 Class 9 magical beasts were solemn. They could sense the pressure even more intensely as Saint Emperors. They understood very well just how powerful the pressure was. Even with their strength, they shivered deep inside before the pressure. It's the goddess of the sea race. It must be her, mumbled the Grand Elder of Mercenary City. He was extremely excited. It was of extreme significance that they had one extra Origin realm expert. However, the Path Lord, Kaiser, and Lenkiros all became very ugly. Their eyes flickered with uncertainty. The sea goddess of the past had appeared, and someone who had surpassed Saint Emperors had appeared once again. The first since the ancient times. It would cause their status to greatly fall without any doubt. They were no longer part of the strongest of the world anymore. Chapter 1369, Revival of the Sea Goddess, 2, Her Majesty has been revived. This is just fantastic. The sea realm can be completely united now. There's no need for us to remain in a balance between 3 large organizations, the Saint Kings of the Sea Goddess Hall all excitedly exclaimed. The successful revival of the Sea Goddess was extraordinarily significant to the Sea Realm. In ancient times, the Sea Realm was under the Sea Goddess Hall's supreme control. There was only a single Sea Goddess Hall for the entire Sea Realm back then. The Heaven Spirit Hall or Serpent God Hall didn't exist like they did now. The experts of the 100 races were extremely happy for the revival of the Sea Goddess as well. In ancient times, only the Sea race had not fallen out with them, so they possessed no prejudice toward the Sea race at all. The Sea Goddess, who had just been revived, slowly hovered into the sky. She bathed in a layer of extremely dense blue light. Although her appearance was obscured, she gave off a holy presence that could not be tarnished. The Sea Goddess presence had been erased already, but Jian Chen and Yadrium still sensed a powerful pressure. The 2 hall masters, who had had their strength sealed up by Yadrium, looked up with difficulty from a nearby mountain. They stared at the Sea Goddess in a daze as despair filled their eyes. Congratulations on your revival, Your Majesty. Jian Chen clasped his hands at the Sea Goddess as he stood on the Ziying sword. He felt joy from the bottom of his heart for her. Yadrium knelt in the air. She was extremely emotional as she said with a trembling voice, "The Hall Master of the Sea Goddess Hall greets Your Majesty. Jian Chen, if it weren't for your assistance, would have never been able to be revived. I cannot express my gratitude with words. If there is anything I can assist you with in the future, I will definitely give it my all, said the sea goddess. Her voice carried a sliver of joy and excitement. She had waited far too long for this moment. I have a great debt of gratitude for your majesty. You've helped me far, far too much in the past, so how can I forget your kindness? This was my duty. I am not someone who forgets kindness that has been shown, Jian Chen replied nonchalantly. He was extremely easygoing. Yadrium, it's been difficult for you during these years while preparing for my resurrection, the sea goddess said to Yadrium. Her voice was gentle. Yadrium's eyes fogged up slightly. She replied courteously, Your Majesty is half a master to me. The only reason I am standing here today is all because of Your Majesty. I am willing to work until my dying breath for Your Majesty. The sea goddess gently sighed and changed the topic of the conversation. She said, The Tianyuan continent is facing a great threat. This is a disaster directly connected to the lives of countless people. We cannot stand neutral in this. Yadrium, once the great calamity arrives, lead the experts of the sea race to fend them off. Yes, Your Majesty. I will definitely do everyone I can, Yadrium firmly responded. Release the two of them. Every single emperor is extremely important to us. We can no longer afford to turn on ourselves and weaken ourselves at this time, followed the sea goddess. The eyes of the two hall masters immediately lit up. They recovered some light to their despair-filled faces. They were both filled with hope. But Your Majesty, the two hall master wanted to stop your revival just then. If it weren't for Jian Chen, they probably would have succeeded already. Do you really want to let them go like this? Yadrium said. They have attempted to harm me and have committed unforgivable crimes, but the threat of the world of forsaken saints takes priority. We can deal with their punishments after we eliminate that threat, the sea goddess leisurely replied. She had always remained in the sea realm, but she knew exactly what was happening on the Tianyuan continent. I've just been revived, so my strength is nowhere near my peak. I need to immediately enter seclusion and recover as soon as possible so that I can deal with the threat of the foreign world. Jian Chen, this divine hull forged from abyssal crystal has been with me for countless years. It's the most valuable item on me, and I don't need it anymore, so I'll gift it to you out of gratitude for your help. You might not be able to use the divine hull, but it'll be extremely significant to the flame mercenaries because its toughness is incomparable to other divine hulls. With a wave of her hand, the divine hull in the air immediately shrunk to the size of a fist and arrived before Jian Chen. It glowed with a blinding blue light. Jian Chen originally wanted to turn the offer down, but after considering the flame mercenaries, he had no choice but to take it. The sea goddess was right. The divine hull would be far too significant to the flame mercenaries. It could be one of their greatest treasures that could be passed down. The sea goddess left after handing over some matters. She found a place to enter seclusion so that she could recover her peak condition as soon as possible. Jian Chen had no more need to stay any longer now that the sea goddess revival had been completed. He rode the Qing Suo sword and left the place as a streak of light. Jian Chen could not help but think of the four divine general that had once hunted him down from the Serpent God Hall. He had once visited the Serpent God Hall with ill intent and fought the four divine generals all by himself, but he had unfortunately been stopped by the hall elders, allowing the four divine generals to emerge with their lives. He had never completed his revenge. I originally planned on taking your lives once I was strong enough, but now that the Tianyuan continent is facing a great threat, I'll deal with our enmity after the disaster, mumbled Jian Chen. The Turtle Clan was utterly different from its former self. Although it did not possess several experts at great perfection of Saint King guarding the clan, it was even more glorious than the past. They had given birth to an emperor. Just the single existence of their ruler allowed the clan to stand on equal ground with the three halls. They had taken the entire sea realm by shock and no one dared to provoke them. There were endless amounts of visitors from various clans daily. The clansmen felt like they were living in a dream right now. They had never been so happy or proud before. They had fought until they bled against several large clans in the past and faced destruction, yet today, basically all the important figures from the surrounding clans had gifted them large numbers of crystal coins. They had not imagined a day like this in the past. However, all of the clansmen knew that the reason why today existed was all because of their ruler. This was why the ruler of the Turtle clan had become the most respected and admired leader among all the clansmen. He received the love of everyone. The discussion hall of the Turtle clan had been redecorated and was now extremely well adorned. It was majestic and grand. Jian Chen sat on the throne in the hall while the elders of the clan courteously stood on both sides of them. I have gathered you all here today to announce two things. The first thing is that I am about to leave the Sea Realm, Jian Chen nonchalantly informed them. The elders all changed in expression when they heard what he had said. They all began to panic and urged him to stay because the clan could not go without a ruler. Jian Chen quietened everyone below and said, "My departure will happen sooner or later, but don't worry. Even if I go, the Turtle clan will remain as one of the most powerful clans in the Sea Realm. The second thing I want to announce is that I will increase all of your strength before I leave. You will become the pillars of support for the Turtle clan in the future." Chapter 1370, Glory of the Turtle Clan. 1. The elders of the Turtle clan all stopped talking. They clearly were all very heavy-hearted. Even after hearing that the ruler would increase their strength and allow it to skyrocket, no one was able to lighten up. This was because the current glory of the clan and the reason why they possessed such a great status in the Sea Realm was because of the ruler himself. The clansmen had not contributed much at all. The ruler had already become the spiritual leader of the clan. His presence possessed extremely great significance to the clan. No one could go without the ruler. Although their ruler had left the clan from time to time, his absence had only been temporary. However, it was different this time. Jian Chen did not give an explanation, but the elders could already sense that his departure would be the real thing. He might not return ever again. "Ruler, don't abandon us. The clan cannot go without you. If the ruler isn't present, the clan will have lost its soul even if we're powerful. We'll just be reduced to the living dead." An elder knelt down as tears streaked his face as he begged the ruler. "Don't abandon our clan, ruler, the clan needs you." The other elders all knelt down and bitterly pleaded with him. They all wanted Jian Chen to stay. Jian Chen sighed inside when he saw this. He fell silent for a while before saying, "If the Turtle clan wants to become truly powerful, you need to be able to go without the ruler. A Turtle clan that can maintain its glory even without their ruler is a true, peak-level clan. Only then can you go through thick and thin without waning. Elders, please come to me into the secret room." Jian Chen led the sorrowful elders into the largest secret room available before removing various heavenly resources from his space ring to increase their strength. The elders knew that the ruler had already made up his mind and would not change it no matter what. They all gloomily sat down in the room in dejection. Jian Chen glanced at the depressed elders and said nothing. He pulled out some heaven-connecting flowers he had obtained from the Xianhuang microcosm. The faint fragrance of the flowers permeated the entire room. The fragrance possessed the power of gathering concentration and could refine the energy within people and suppress their inner demons, allowing them to cultivate without being affected. Even in the immortals' world, the flowers were extremely precious. And the flowers he had brought out had grown in the Xianhuang microcosm, so they were even more extraordinary. Their effects were even stronger than ordinary ones. The elders immediately gathered their attention when they caught a whiff of the fragrance. Their eyes shone with interest. They were brimming with vigor once again. They were clear-headed once more. Their sorrow from the departure of their ruler had instantly vanished. Jian Chen secretly praised the effects of the flowers. They really were powerful when he sensed the reaction of the elders. The power of the flowers had not disappointed him. Jian Chen pulled out a large gourd from his space ring and poured out some blood. He split it into over a dozen droplets, which then floated before each elder. Each droplet was thumb-sized and pulsed with powerful energy. This is what I obtained from the Hall Master of the Serpent God Hall. It's the blood of an emperor and should possess great benefits for you, said Jian Chen, before using his mind to guide the droplets of blood into the mouths of the elders. The energy hidden within the blood immediately began to radiate as soon as it reached their stomachs. A violent presence rampaged within the elders' bodies. The elders became too busy to talk. They immediately gathered their attention and closed their eyes to refine the droplet of blood. Although it was a Saint Emperor's blood, there was not a lot of it and it had been stored for a long time already. The violent nature present inside had mostly dissipated, no longer able to pose any threats to the elders. The elders refined the blood very quickly. Not only did they sense an obvious increase in their strength, but their bodies also became even more powerful as well. The great effect of the droplets of blood was not an increase in strength but an increase in toughness of the body. The elders all beamed with joy. The blood of an emperor was something that countless experts lusted over, but no emperor was willing to allow others to consume their blood, as it would take a toll on their vitality without a doubt at all. They all felt extremely proud seeing how they could actually enjoy something like this. They all looked at Jian Chen again and saw him boiling water, about to make tea. Before them was a small bowl, and each bowl was filled with a faint, green liquid. This is divine water of the world. An elder recognized what it was and could not help but cry out. The divine water of the world was a rare treasure of the sea realm. With just a single gulp of it, it was enough to make a person with mediocre talent become a genius that would only appear once in 10,000 years. It possessed great effects on saint rulers as well. Not only could it increase their strength, but it could also refine their souls and set down a foundation when they break through to Saint King. The divine water of the world will allow you to reach the 15th star without any obstructions or worrying about personal talent. Drink it, Jian Chen calmly ordered. He had collected several hundred liters of it from the depths of the divine realm, so he still had a lot of it in stock. The elders all excitedly drank the water before them before closing their eyes. They all seemed intoxicated. Not only would the refinement of the soul from the water fail to cause them any pain, but it would also make them feel like they were transcending. It was extremely comfortable. After a certain period of time, the special feelings brought on by the water slowly vanished. The elders opened their eyes and were all overjoyed. Not only had their souls strengthened after ingesting the water, but even their strength had made great improvements as well. They did not break through, but it was equivalent to several decades or even a century worth of cultivation. What left them ravished with joy was that after the refinement of the souls, breaking through to Saint King would become 100 times easier. All they needed to do was work hard and reaching Saint King would basically pose no problem. At this moment, the light fragrance of tea hit their noses. Jian Chen had poured the tea for them, and on the tables, there were several fist-sized peaches. These were first-grade violet cloud peaches. A single one of them could increase cultivation by 500 years, and these 500 years was calculated according to the immortal's world. It would have far greater effects than that on the elders because their talent was not particularly impressive. Under Jian Chen's orders, the elders first consumed the peaches before downing the entire cup of comprehension tea. The emperor's blood and divine water of the world from before was only for establishing a foundation for them. The violet cloud peach and comprehension tea would be the heavenly resources responsible for making their strength skyrocket. Chapter 1371, Glory of the Turtle Clan, 2. As soon as the violet cloud peach reached their stomachs, it immediately transformed into a vast amount of energy. The energy was pure and powerful and filled every corner of the elders' bodies. The elders of the Turtle clan were all extremely shocked and stunned. They found the energy just far too vast and tremendous, having exceeded the limits that their bodies could withstand. What shocked them even more was that such a small peach contained this unbelievable amount of energy. The Emperor's blood and divine water of the world were nothing compared to the peach. The elders began to arduously refine the energy with fear and unease. They were afraid of being blown apart by the energy. However, they all let out a breath of relief. The energy within a single peach was terrifying, but it was not as violent as they had imagined it to be. Instead, it was extremely gentle and did not negatively affect them at all. As they refined the peaches, the comprehension tea came into great use. It took them into a wondrous state of mind. Under this state, the mysteries of the world, which they would usually take forever to comprehend, were being presented before them in a clear way. In their absent-mindedness, they seemed to understand and comprehend something. Their comprehension of the mysteries of the world rapidly skyrocketed. Before Jian Chen had possessed his fated swords, he had used the tea to force his way into sword origin. That was more than enough to demonstrate how great the effects of the tea were on people's abilities to comprehend the laws of the world. The elders were using the tea to comprehend the mysteries of the world that was far less significant than the way of the sword, so their understanding improved very quickly. Jian Chen sat before the elders and carefully observed their states. He watched over them, to prevent them from encountering any accidents as they went through the process. This was the first time he had given someone the heavenly resources from the Xianhuang microcosm. He could test the true effects of the heavenly resources on the elders. The presence of the elders rapidly strengthened as powerful energy pulsed from them. Their strength continued to increase. Suddenly, a faint white mist drifted out of the bodies of the elders. It grew thicker and thicker before enveloping them entirely. Immediately, the energy of the world in the secret room became extremely dense before dispersing into the surroundings. Jian Chen frowned when he saw this. He could tell that the white mist from the elders was the vast energy from the peaches. They're actually unable to completely refine a first-grade violet cloud peach. They still wasted quite a lot of energy, Jian Chen thought while feeling some pain. The increase in strength brought on by the peach would decrease as a result. Ziying, Qing Sua, is there any way to prevent the leakage of energy? Jian Chen turned to the sword spirits for help. Master, this is a common occurrence. Not everyone can absorb all the energy within a peach. Normally in the immortals world, a weaker person will always have a senior of theirs watching over them when they consume the peach so that the senior can use their supreme strength to stop the leakage of energy or use some special method to seal the energy within them. However, you still don't possess that ability with your current strength, Master, Qing Sua told him. Jian Chen gave up after listening to their explanation. All he could do was helplessly watch as the energy constantly drifted out of the elders. He could not stop it. Jian Chen stayed there for close to a month before the elders finally refined all the energy they could. The moment they opened their eyes, a tremendous presence immediately radiated from them, rushing out like a flood. It blasted the room to pieces in a single moment, caused it to collapse. The entire clan was greatly affected by their auras. Jian Chen put away the flowers, and with a flash, he left the room and returned to ground level. He stood with his arms crossed. The secret room he had just been in began to collapse, quickly forming a deep ditch nearby. The elders all erased their presences and rushed out of the ground. All of them stood behind Jian Chen while feeling emotional. They were all overjoyed when they sensed their current strength. They dropped to their knees and cried out, "We thank the ruler for your gift." At this moment, quite a few clansmen had gathered in the surroundings. They had no idea what had just happened, but they immediately bowed when they saw Jian Chen there. They politely cried out, "We greet the ruler." Jian Chen dispersed the crowd with a wave of his hand. He glanced over all the elders and smiled in satisfaction. He said, well done, you haven't disappointed me. Your strength has rapidly increased and you have all reached the 15th star, and 5 of you have even reached the 16th star. In the entire sea realm, there is no organization, aside from the 3 ancient halls, that possesses over a dozen Saint King. From today on, even without me, you will be able to support the clan. As he said that, Jian Chen glanced at the sky above him. The sea realm was enveloped by a huge barrier, which was why no rainbow clouds appeared when the elders all became Saint Kings. The elders' excitement gradually vanished. They said rather gloomily, "Ruler, we wish for you to visit the clan often in the future. All of us will be thinking of you." Jian Chen glanced around the bustling clan and said, "The Turtle Clan is a clan that stands at the very peak of the sea realm. I have finally completed the Grand Elder's wish. I may visit you from time to time, but I will be handing the clan to you from now on. Farewell." Jian Chen jumped on the Ziying sword and took off as a streak of light. "We bid the ruler farewell." The elders behind remained on their knees. Every single one of them felt horrible. Their joy from becoming Saint Kings had already completely vanished. Jian Chen visited the Grand Elder's grave before riding his sword to the Sea Goddess Hall. Yadrium received him personally while several hall elders followed behind her. Now, all the hall elders looked at Jian Chen with gazes of respect and fear. The most eye-catching person among them was a woman in a blue dress. She was alluring and no less beautiful than Yadrium. Jian Chen greeted Yadrium before looking toward the woman. He clasped his hands at her and said, "I thank Elder Atlantis' assistance back when I was being hunted by the experts of the Heaven Spirit Hall and Serpent God Hall." The woman was Atlantis, the one known as the strongest below Emperor. She was a hall elder of the Sea Goddess Hall. Atlantis bowed to Jian Chen and said, "The Emperor must be joking. You probably only hid your strength intentionally back them. Even without my assistance, they wouldn't have been able to do anything to you. I was unneeded in that situation, so please forgive me for making a spectacle." "Jian Chen, please come in," said Yadrium as she invited Jian Chen into the hall. Yadrium and Jian Chen sat opposite of each other inside a well-decorated room. Atlantis personally served tea and fruit for them. It hasn't been peaceful over the past few days. Her Majesty's revival has thrown the sea realm into an uproar and the 2 other halls have wavered. Many people have broken away from them and joined our Sea Goddess Hall. If it were not for the fact that the 2 hall masters were still alive, the 2 halls probably would have dissolved already, said Yadrium. "This is a perfect opportunity for you to unite the sea realm," replied Jian Chen. Yadrium glanced at Jian Chen and shook her head. She gently sighed, "That's not what Her Majesty wanted me to do. She said that having the sea realm balanced between the 3 halls is not necessarily bad." Jian Chen said nothing. He had nothing to say about the internal affairs of the sea realm. Yadrium picked up a finger-sized piece of fruit and ate it. She said, "Jian Chen, have you come this time for your friend?" "Yes, that's exactly why I've come. Back in the territory of the Heaven Spirit Hall, Her Majesty told me, as she was leaving, that my friend has been sent to the Sea Goddess Hall for cultivation." "Hall Master, is my friend well?" Jian Chen inquired. "You have no need to worry. After your friend was brought here by Her Majesty, she has enjoyed the treatment of a valued guest. I have already sent people with large quantities of divine quality crystals to help with her cultivation. She is completely fine right now, and her strength is rapidly increasing. I'll take you to see her right now." Yadrium stood up and left as she spoke. She personally led the way for Jian Chen. In her opinion, the only polite thing to do would be to personally lead him to his friend. The divine hall was extremely vast. Jian Chen went through twists and turns as he followed Yadrium before arriving in a forbidden zone. He stood in front of a large door to a secret room. Yadrium opened the door and a ray of dazzling blue light immediately flowed out. An extremely pretty woman, who seemed to be in her 20s, sat inside cultivating. Her long hair ran down her shoulders. Her face was almond-shaped and her lips were like cherries. Her long eyelashes gently trembled, making her seem extremely enchanting. This pretty woman was Huang Luan, who Jian Chen had not seen for a long time. However, the current Huang Luan had already undergone an overwhelming change in strength compared to before. She possessed the water spirit's body, so her talent was shocking. She cultivated at an extremely fast rate, especially after she had arrived in the sea realm. She practiced a cultivation method imparted on her by the sea goddess, and her rate of improvement could only be described as stunning. She had already reached the 7th heavenly layer of Saint Ruler. Although she was nothing compared to Jian Chen, there was rarely anyone in the world who could reach the 7th heavenly layer in such a short time after just breaking through. Huang Luan seemed to sense the door open and was roused from her state of cultivation. The moment she opened her eyes, her gaze froze. Her eyelashes gently trembled as she stared at Jian Chen in a daze. Her face was filled with excitement and joy. "You two catch up. I'll be leaving first as I still have matters I need to attend to." Yadrium left and secretly dismissed the people in the surroundings, leaving Jian Chen and Huang Luan by themselves. Chapter 1372, Departure. In the blink of an eye, the surroundings fell so silent that even a dropped needle would be heard clearly. Only Jian Chen and Huang Luan's long breaths were vaguely audible. Huang Luan's breathing gradually became heavier and the sound of her heart beating seemed audible as well. This was all due to her excitement. Suddenly, Huang Luan lunged at Jian Chen and wrapped her arms tightly around him. She buried her face deep in his chest as her body slightly trembled. Huang Luan possessed the water spirit's body, so she should have possessed a warm and gentle personality. However, her personality was the exact opposite. Deep in her was a natural sense of chivalry, and she was relatively straightforward, especially in certain aspects. She lacked the bashfulness present in young girls. Jian Chen gently embraced Huang Luan as he could feel her supple skin. He could not help but let his state of mind waver slightly. "Luaner, it's been tough for you these days. I left you here all by yourself to cultivate. You had to endure the boredom and loneliness silently." Jian Chen sniffed Huang Luan's fragrance as he blamed himself. He had no choice but to leave Huang Luan here after bringing her to the sea realm. Huang Luan covered Jian Chen's mouth with a hand as her eyes filled with tears. She affectionately looked at Jian Chen's handsome and masculine face and gently said, "Chen, I don't blame you. The only person that can be blamed is me for being useless, and I couldn't help you, forcing you to go through storms of blood all by yourself. I'm currently cultivating as hard as I can to increase my strength. Once I become a Saint King, I'll be able to help you." Jian Chen was greatly touched by her words. He embraced Huang Luan tighter and lowered his head to gently kiss her forehead. He tenderly said, "Luaner, you don't need to be like that. My hard days of life are over. I have the strength to hold myself up in the world now and protect those beside me." All the hidden thoughts they felt exploded at that very moment after being apart for so many days. In the silence and without any disturbances, Jian Chen and Huang Luan remained in each other's embrace while they softly spoke. They revealed their true feelings. The two of them talked about a lot of things. Jian Chen told her about everything that he had experienced over the past few years right down to the smallest detail. He did not feel like he had the need to hide anything from Huang Luan. The only thing he kept secret from her were the azulate swords and the immortal's world. It would not be good for her to learn about these matters too soon. Huang Luan became overjoyed after the initial shock when she learned that Jian Chen could easily kill Saint Emperors now. At that moment, Huang Luan had never felt so at ease. She remained in her lover's embrace. Over the past few days, she had been working hard on cultivating. She used her longing as motivation. She had always thought about becoming powerful to help out Jian Chen. She knew that Jian Chen's strength had increased very quickly in recent years, but it had not been a peaceful time for him. He often walked on the edge and would always be on the front lines of life. He roamed the boundary between life and death, living each day with great difficulty. Now, Huang Luan became extremely excited after she learned that her lover had become a saint emperor. This was because she no longer needed to worry about Jian Chen's safety, which allowed her to be at ease. Luaner, I've come today specifically to take you back to the Tian Yuan continent. You've been away for so long, so it's time for you to come back. And it's time for us to find Changyang Qingyun and settle the matter of him planting an ancient secret technique in you, Jian Chen gently explained. As soon as he mentioned Changyang Qingyun, a sliver of fierce anger flashed through his eyes. Huang Luan remained in his embrace obediently like a cat. She tenderly nodded and said nothing. Jian Chen took Huang Luan to see Yadrium afterward and thanked her for looking after Huang Luan all this time. He pulled out a first and second grade violet cloud peach from his space ring and said, "Hall Master, these are some heavenly resources I obtained in the space that I went into to search for Her Majesty's revival materials. They possessed extremely wondrous effects. This peach of a deeper color is for you, and please hand the other one to Elder Atlantis for giving me assistance back then." Yadrium thanked Jian Chen before accepting the 2 peaches. She did not pay too much mind to them. Jian Chen could tell with a single glance that Yadrium treated the 2 peaches as nothing. He could not help but add, "Hall Master, do not underestimate these 2 peaches. Once I leave, it's best for the Hall Master to ingest the peach as soon as possible. Its effects will definitely give you a pleasant surprise." "Really?" Yadrium examined the peach in her hands and glanced at Jian Chen doubtfully. She did not believe that the peach would surprise her at all. She was already a saint emperor. No matter how valuable the heavenly resource was, its effects would be insignificant on an expert like her. Jian Chen also left behind 2 second-grade comprehension tea leaves and some water from the springs of life. He told Yadrium how to prepare the tea before leaving with Huang Luan. Jian Chen stood on the Ziying sword with his arm around Huang Luan's waist above the sea goddess hall. He shot off into the distance as a streak of light, headed to the serpent god hall. The Ziying sword moved extremely quickly, so quickly that Jian Chen was unable to distinguish the rapidly receding landscape around him. He used the senses of his soul to find his way. Huang Luan felt like she had entered a tunnel in spacetime as she stood on the sword. Everything was all blurry around her. "Chen, this Ziying sword is so fast. I never thought that the 2 swords you forged could be used like this." Huang Luan emotionally sighed as she stared at the Ziying sword beneath her in surprise. "This is only the base speed. As I grow stronger, the speed will increase," Jian Chen smiled complacently. Traveling had always been a pain to him due to the fact that he was unable to comprehend the mysteries of the world on the level of a saint king. The Ziying sword made up for this flaw. Soon, Jian Chen arrived in the territory of the Serpent God Hall and stopped before some ruins. This was the territory of the Kaler tribe, but it had been reduced to nothing. The entire place had fallen into ruins. Chapter 1373, Returning to Flame City. The Kaler tribe had been reduced to almost nothing from flames. The ground had been burned to a pitch black with a few black remains scattered throughout the surroundings. From the ruins and remains, the Kaler tribe had been devastated several days ago. The ruins were silent without any signs of life. The moaning of the wind blew some ashes off the ground. It was a dreary sight. The Ziying sword flickered with violet light. It was enveloped by a thick layer of violet sword qi, making only a violet figure visible. It slowly descended under Jian Chen's control, stopping 20 meters above the ground. Jian Chen gently held Huang Luan as he slowly glanced over the ruins. He remained silent throughout his observation. He could still clearly remember that the region had been extremely bustling when he had given Kaya the cultivation method of the Octaterra Emperor. However, the prosperous tribe was nowhere to be seen now. It had been reduced to dreary ruins. Sigh, Jian Chen exhaled deeply after quite a long time. When he had given the cultivation method to Kaya, it was to thank her for her help and to find the Octaterra Emperor a successor. Thus, Kaya would become the second Octaterra Emperor. Yet now, I wonder if Kaya is still alive, Jian Chen thought. He felt no sorrow. This was a world where the strong preyed on the weak. Tragedies like the Kalar tribe happened often both in the Sea Realm and the Tian Yuan continent. Chen, is your friend here? Huang Luan gazed around before looking at Jian Chen. Jian Chen said, "This used to be a friend's home. I never expected this tribe to face destruction. I wonder if my friend is still alive or not." Afterward, Jian Chen expanded his soul as hard as he could and enveloped almost 300,000 kilometers. He searched as hard as he could, but he did not find Kaya in the end. "Let's go." Jian Chen stopped searching and left with Huang Luan. He flew toward the Tian Yuan continent. Jian Chen flew over the oceans around the Tian Yuan continent with Huang Luan and arrived in the Fire Dragon Kingdom, one of the 8 great kingdoms. He made his way to the royal palace. The Fire Dragon Kingdom was no weaker than the Qinhuang Kingdom. They also possessed 4 saint rulers, the 4 imperial protectors of the kingdom. Jian Chen's sudden arrival took the royal palace by great shock. The king and the 4 imperial protectors received him personally. They behaved with extreme humility and fear even though they reigned at the top on any other day. They spoke politely and were afraid of breathing too loud. Jian Chen stated his intentions in a straightforward manner. He wanted to borrow the space gate to return to Flame City. He had forged the azulate swords now and could move very quickly by riding them, but it was several million kilometers or more from the sea to Flame City. Space gates would still be faster. The king and the imperial protectors did not show any disagreement at all toward Jian Chen's request. They even personally activated the space gate for him, sending him off courteously. As Jian Chen and Huang Luan disappeared into the space gate, the king and imperial protectors immediately let out a breath of relief. Jian Chen did not give off a presence at all, but they felt like they were being pushed down by a mountain when they were before him. It was a psychological pressure. Imperial protectors, has Jian Chen really become a saint emperor? Why does he still need to borrow the space gate if he is one? The king wiped the sweat from his forehead as he asked the 4 imperial protectors. The imperial protectors fell into silent thought and did not respond right away. One of them only began to confidently speak after quite some time. "I have an old friend who was cultivating in the volcanic regions of the west. I've obtained definite information that Jian Chen has really become a saint emperor. Coupled with his 2 swords that were nurtured by the world, even saint emperors are no longer his opponents. Jian Chen used a single strike to defeat 2 saint emperors from the beast god continent and scared the path lord of carnal desires away. Jian Chen right now is far more powerful than any regular saint emperor. I have no clue why he has to borrow the space gate, however." The king gasped. He became so frightened by the fact that Jian Chen had defeated 2 saint emperors with a single strike that his heart almost stopped beating. However, he then became extremely excited and elated when he thought about how he had just come in contact with such a great expert at such a close range. He immediately sent out an order, immediately released the news that the Saint Emperor Jian Chen has just visited our kingdom. The king immediately announced the news of his visit. Now that Jian Chen had basically become the strongest Saint Emperor of the Tian Yuan continent, a personal visit from him was a great honor of the kingdom. It could raise their status and fame. 20 kilometers away from Flame City, space violently distorted before ripping open, forming a colorful space gate. The space gate slowly vanished after Jian Chen and Huang Luan had stepped out. Everything quickly returned to how it had been before. Jian Chen hovered 10 meters in the air as he stared at the city in the distance. The walls were pitch black, making it seem like a huge beast was slumbering there. The walls gave off a feeling of domination. A golden barrier was expanded across the city, enveloping the entire place. The only way into the place were through the city gates. Jian Chen's eyes narrowed when he saw the golden barrier. His gaze became extremely sharp in a single moment, like two drawn swords. His eyes shone resplendently. This was because he actually felt shocked by the pulses of energy from the barrier. The energy was just far too powerful, having completely exceeded the energy of Saint Emperors. An Origin Realm expert? Who else has reached that level of cultivation other than Protector Shui of the Ice Goddess Hall and Shaoling? And they've even put such a powerful barrier around the city? Jian Chen was filled with doubt. He flew toward the city with Huang Yuan. Bai Lian and Yu were currently gathered around a table as they personally taught a chubby, white boy how to write. He only seemed to be 3 or 4 years old. The boy was very cute. He wore golden clothes and had no hair. His large eyes were extremely bright as they flickered with naivety. However, diligence was spelled across his face. Xiao Jin, tell me what this word is, Yu asked the young boy with a smile as she held a piece of paper. Heaven, the boy responded with his cute voice. Then this? Bai Lian also asked the boy what was on the piece of paper. Earth, the boy replied correctly. Xiao Jin is so smart, a perfect memory. Without long, Xiao Jin will know everything, Bai Lian giggled. Her gaze toward the boy was filled with affection. At this moment, Bai Hai walked into the room in white robes. He pulled Xiao Jin away and chuckled, Xiao Jin, you'll have plenty of time to learn how to read in the future. Come with me first. I'll teach you a new ability. The barrier you created is extremely powerful, but there are still many flaws. The barrier of Mercenary City made its energy sink into the ground, making the ground as tough as steel. Come with Grandpa, I'll teach you a new way to use the energy. The boy did not resist at all as he was led away by Bai Hai. Only Yu and Bai Lian voiced their displeasure. What do you know? There's plenty of time to learn how to read in the future. The utmost priority is to make Flame City as tough as steel as well as to get Xiao Jin better acquainted with his abilities, said Bai Hai righteously. He ignored the disagreement of the two girls as he led Xiao Jin away. But at this very moment, Xiao Jin seemed to sense something. He looked in the direction of the city gates before turning into a flash of golden light. He vanished in a single moment. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.